Staying live now, and I see you, and I hear some static, Russ. I think you're good, buddy.
All right, okay. We're here today on Tuesday, August 18th. Welcome to jcpsdigitallearning.com. We've got a full day of digital learning for you today, and we're kicking it off as we look at our schedule at 8:30 with facilitating virtual circles with MTSS Behavior, Jen Marston, Josh Conksel, I hope I said that name right, Laura Bryant. Those three will be presenting on facilitating virtual circles. Then it becomes at 9 o'clock with building authentic relationships with elementary age children in a virtual setting with Dr. Laura Donnelly. Then at 9:30 we've got supporting the mental health of your special needs students with Shauna Paul. Very important topic there. And 10 o'clock referring students for mental health supports during virtual learning. And then bullying prevention supports at 10:30, and then building relationships virtually. Today we are starting off with this facilitating virtual circles, and I feel like today has kind of got the mental health spin on it, and it's also got the digital citizenship part. I had a colleague way back I used to work with that used to say the most important thing you will ever teach your students is digital citizenship. And I mean, this was something she said 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, Dr. Sarah Bumpus. And people used to kind of look at her funny about it, like, no, I think the most important thing I'll teach my kid is fractions or, alliteration, something like that, grammar. I don't know. But really, if you look at today's world, in the world we're in right now, there's never been more truth to that statement. The most important thing you will teach your students is digital citizenship. Okay, and frankly, some adults can learn some digital citizenship too. But so we're getting started today with facilitating virtual circles with Joshua Conksel, Laura Bryant, and Jennifer Marston. Awesome, very good. So guys, are you ready to take this away?
Yeah.
Yes, we are. If you are.
Awesome. Yep,
Yes,
I'm ready.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Good morning. How you
Good to
doing?
see you, buddy.
You too.
All right. So who's presenting here? Jennifer. All right, Jennifer.
I am. It should
Awesome.
be.
I see it.
Okay. And then, all right, trying to refresh my memory on the closed captioning.
Go down to go to view. Go ahead and present your screen. View. Or yeah, there we go. And then down. Yep, there it is. You got it.
Awesome.
Click on the. Oh, did you hit allow? Click
I
on
think I got it.
All right, good. You got it. Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started then. So just wanted to welcome you all to Facilitating Virtual Circles. And we'll introduce ourselves officially here in a minute, but we are with MTSS Behavior. And we hope that you learn a lot of things today, but also can see how what you probably did in your classroom in a in-person setting, a lot of that still applies to circles in a virtual world. So we're first going to begin with some of the components of MTSS. MTSS aligns resources and supports for students and teachers and staff who deliver instruction, provide multiple levels of support for all learners. MTSS is data-driven decision-making, focused on overall school improvement that is sustainable, produces professional development that is aligned across the school and district settings, and addresses academic, social, emotional, and behavioral development. We have a nice little graphic here, a little concept map that provides a visual of the departments within MTSS. So I'll start with our department first. We're the behavior department. And MTSS Behavior supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks. The two main frameworks used by JCPS are Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, or what you probably know it as PBIS, and Behavior Support System Model, which is aligned with PBIS and restorative practices. In addition, our team supports school personnel in understanding and utilizing classroom management strategies. Another department under MTSS, Culture and Climate, is the Engagement Department. And their goal is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. They have 6 MTSS toolkits. They were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instruction and practices to increase student engagement, reduce student behaviors, and decrease disproportionality. The third department is MTSS Academic. MTSS Academic supports schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic support that includes differentiation, personalization, and enrichment activities using the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, principles, focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and supports. You can see down here at the bottom the points of contact for each department. So if you click on that, that will just take you directly to their contact information. So here you can see another little graphic to see who supports your zone. Hopefully this is helpful to you to see, who to reach out to. And truly, if you reach out to anybody within your zone, we'll all be able to point you in the right directions. We are technically under Culture and Climate. Dr. Katie DeFerrari is our assistant superintendent. And we have Dr. Naomi Brahim is the department leader, and our behavior supervisor is Sandra Hensel. So now that we've gone over who we are as a department, let's kind of jump into our learning intentions for the day. Our learning intention today is that we will learn how to facilitate a circle and build relationships virtually. Now, I'm assuming that we are all really great at this in a face-to-face setting and in person, but trying to build relationships over a computer, especially when this time we are trying to build relationships with students that we had never met, can kind of seem a little challenging and overwhelming. So we're hoping that, today you can get a few tools that you can use as we begin NTI 2.0. So I know we have a short video here, and I'm not really sure if the sound will work. So if it doesn't work, we have the video linked in the presentation that you're welcome to watch later. But as the video plays, and hopefully it works, in the chat, we're just asking you to list some benefits that you see doing a circle, or that you've experienced doing a circle, whether it was virtually or it was in person. So I'm going to give this a try here. If it doesn't play, just let me know. If you can't hear it, just let me know.
Don't believe we can hear it. I hear faint audio. Is there any way to maybe turn it up?
I can try. When we practiced it, we were having some issues too, hearing it from another person's end. So let's see.
The good news is I just posted your presentation into the chat. So you have a link to this presentation, guys. It's in the YouTube chat right now.
And
Perfect.
Jennifer, it may be the audio on the machine you're on, not within the clip itself. But if that
Okay.
doesn't work, then
That's okay. It's not a long video, so we can watch it another time. Laura, was there anything in the chat that you were seeing of what are some benefits of doing the circles?
No, I didn't see anything. I'd asked if anybody could hear it, and I don't think that they could hear it. So it's a good little clip. If you can go back and watch it at some point, it kind of summarizes really well what it's like to be in a circle. But no, nobody had said anything.
Okay.
In here. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so why should we do circles? Circles help us build our relationships with our students and our staff. And so as we begin NTI 2.0, this is more important than ever, since we aren't going to get to see our kiddos and even our staff members face to face. So figuring out how to still build those relationships when we can't be in the school buildings together is going to be very important. Circles give people a voice. It allows everybody's voice to be heard. Sometimes we are in a classroom and somebody is overtaking the conversation, or you have that student or even the staff member that is the one always answering the questions. So by doing a circle, this gives everybody a chance to be heard. Circles promote emotional well-being. They empower change and growth over time. And after you start doing some circles, you'll realize that some of your most quiet students will begin to open up, and that's that change and growth that we see regularly while doing circles. Circles increase responsibility, and they create a safe space. Now, when we think about circles, a lot of us think of, a lot of our elementary schools do morning meetings, and we think of doing circles just with students. But circles can be and should be done with other teachers, maybe in PLCs, in staff meetings, even in your admin meetings, to build those relationships and that trust amongst your team. So yes, we would always want to be doing them with students, but we can also be doing them with adults. And now, when I was in the classroom, I led several circles, and you always want to begin with having an adult leading it and modeling it. But I got to a point where I was able to have my students lead some circles. So we would start with a big teacher-led circle, and then they would have little breakout circles. So there becomes a point where hopefully your students will be able to run the circles or give you ideas and be more than just a participant, but they can also help create those circles and that community within your classroom or your school.
Okay, so at this point, my name is Josh Conzel. I'm the MTSS Behavior Support for Zone 2. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to get started with how we get started with virtual circles. And usually there's 5 things we want to look for. The very first thing really is establishing our circle norms. Number 2, stating the purpose of the circle. Number 3 is once you've stated that purpose and you've gotten the norms and expectations kind of set and settled, you want to start with some breathing exercises or mindfulness activities, somewhere to get the students or adults engaged and refocused, recentered, and at a place where they can kind of be at one with one another. Number 4, ask a question that every person can answer. Make sure these questions are everyone can answer, yes, but also they are directed towards a main topic, your focus around your expectations, and then that purpose of the day. We will give you some examples here shortly on some SEL questions that are great options for the first 6 weeks of school, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. And currently, maybe some great questions to kind of guide those circles to get students re-engaged and re-centered. And then number 5, have a way for each person to answer. So again, leading back to that student voice or just peer voice, having that voice open and an option within each of your circles.
And I'd like to just add that I'll be in the chat with a few other people from the department. So if, as Josh is talking, you all have questions, please go ahead and write your question in, and one of us will be able to answer and support you that way while he's presenting.
Thank you. Jen, can you switch to the next slide?
Can you not see it?
I can see it now. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, they're going back to the first step. So the very first thing you want to do for your virtual circles is, of course, like everything else, is create your expectations or your norms. So the very first thing is you really want to tie, if you can, tie these norms to your school-wide expectations. Your schools should have school-wide expectations ready to roll. If they don't, then you create your virtual norms. But if they do, like for example, here's one that we've worked with a few schools. This is the ROARS, a school-wide expectation, but we've adapted it towards, of course, a virtual circle. So what that looks like, of course, with respect, here you have mute or silence your microphone. In ownership, we talk about the digital citizenship guidelines. So we really want to make sure that we are speaking towards that virtual world, that NTI language, when we're building these expectations and these norms.
And Josh, I just want to throw in there too that once you, if you start the year, with these expectations, tying them back to your school-wide expectations, when we get back into the building one day, that's not something you're necessarily going to have to reteach all over. You'll just have to change it back to the in-person expectations. But they'll be very familiar with what already ROAR stands for and what that actually looks, sounds, and feels like in a setting,
Yeah, and no matter what expectations you use, you're right. I'm making sure that that transition back to the classroom, that brick and mortar, that it is as smooth as possible. So this does help out with that for sure. And if your school doesn't, which majority of yours should, we have helped work with your administrators to build some of those. If they don't have school-wide expectations, then your own, for example, the Google Meet expectations to the right there on this slide are 6 examples that we have. The one that sticks out to me the most and to our team the most is that be engaged. So when we talk about camera usage, that is a huge piece that's really came up since last spring, is we want to make sure that in our use of camera, that the expectation is not that we are forcing students to make sure their camera is on. I know we all want to make sure, we want to see everyone's faces and our kiddos' faces, but sometimes because of equity reasons or students might be self-conscious with what's going on at their home, how they're looking, or maybe we all know we have maybe kids at home and so forth, or we really can't be at the screen all the time. So making sure those students or adults are still engaged, checking in, doing a poll everywhere.com, or doing a poll on, if you're using Zoom, but hopefully we're using Google Meets. If we're doing some form of like a breakout room or grouping where they can still be engaged, but don't have to use that camera. I know as we go, we want to build that. We want to build that culture and that relationship. So hopefully they would have that camera on as we go, but setting that as an expectation right off the bat isn't always the best idea to go forward with. I know, Laura, you wanted to come with the topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on my experience in the classroom, because I was still in the classroom in this spring. And I think I always just welcomed the students to turn on their camera, let them know that, of course, I wanted to see them and that they were welcome to turn that on. But it was always an option. It's never something that I required. And I found that some of the students that were shy in class were, of course, the ones that kept their cameras off. But when they did turn it on, it was authentic and genuine. They really wanted to show themselves, and it was a special moment. So I feel like going into the fall, not having maybe the rapport for some teachers and students established yet, that would just be one way to build that rapport with kiddos and make it an even easier transition back into the classroom once we get there.
Definitely, thank you. And on this slide too, and a lot of the slides within this Google slide, we have several resources that are linked. And of course, like Jen was showing you earlier, we have the link to the school-wide expectations that are examples. But also for this camera usage, there's an article that does a great way to describe just the reasons why it's best to, and reasons how to build that culture where students will want to be interactive and will want to use their camera based on, other than being, I guess, forced to in a way when you have that expectation of having the camera on. So that's something that we really picked up on in the spring when we were seeing those expectations being built. Jen, can I see the screen again?
Yeah. What can you see, Josh?
When you talk, then it pops up on my screen.
Oh.
So now we're good.
Oh. Hold on. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
So making sure that when we have these norms and expectations too, that these are reviewed before we begin. Some of the best examples that we've seen is honestly maybe 5 minutes before your presentation or sometime before your presentation, the first slide you have during NCI will be a homepage which has your expectations in the corner and then your guiding question for the day. Having those up and ready so when students are coming together, when they're getting welcomed, when they're entering the chat, when they're entering the room, that's the first thing they see. And then it's an easy transition to kind of welcome and to review those expectations as you go. Make sure, again, being posted. So again, this is, if they're up on your screen first thing, you can talk and redirect them. If you, in the back of your wall, if you want to post them up just like as your normal classroom, but just making somehow, some way that they're visual and that you're referring back to them throughout your lesson or chat. Run to number 2. Oh, and this was an example. Again, this is, again, on our slides. So if you want to access this, this is a great visual that describes just, again, some of our preconceptions of having the camera on and making that an expectation and reasons why we should just more focus on the engagement than the actual camera usage. And so you can take a look at that. Again, there's even links on that visual. So it's a great other resource to have. So after we created our norms and created these expectations, the second thing we really want to do before creating our virtual circle is really to think about the purpose of what we're guiding this circle for. So really, our circles are proactive. 80% is proactive, and we want to make sure that we are building a purpose for this circle before we even begin. And in the circle, there's usually 3 different focuses we can look at. There's a social emotional purpose, making the connections with one another by sharing a little bit about ourselves. We can do it content purpose wise, so discussing some challenges to understanding what's happening in the past or what's going to happen in the future. And then there's the behavioral purposes, so virtual norms using a Jamboard for small group. So this is again referring back to those expectations and connecting them. Now, we don't always have to use just one of those purposes. We can, as always, a mirror or a merge of one or two. A lot of times I usually always start off with a behavior purpose to kind of guide us throughout the day, connect that to a social emotional, and then end it up with the content because once we're done with the circle, we're leading into a math content or we're going into language arts, whatever topic we're moving into. So it can help us connect our day-to-day life with what's going on personally and I guess professionally, what we're doing in the classroom as well. So it's a good blend of the 3. Once we've had that purpose and we've created that purpose and focus, now then it would be perfect time to then do a breathing exercise or a mindfulness technique. At this point, this is when you really want everyone recentered. You started off with, all right, here's what we're doing, here's expectations of what I see for us, and then let's recenter ourselves. So that way the focus of the rest of the circle is just really on one another, self-awareness, group awareness, and being able to talk openly.
And Josh, our friends from the social emotional department lent us this slide here, I think that's being shown, of some ideas for breathing that are really great.
Can you see the PDF?
Now we
I just saw it.
Okay, it must take like a few extra seconds, but so yes, there are some examples if you don't have any tools in your toolbox and how to get your kids centered before a circle. There's a lot going on in the world, so just making sure that they are focused in what you are doing that day just takes a few seconds and can really bring attention and awareness to your circle and then your lesson.
And again, we have an example there with the Go Noodle, and Go Noodle is always a great place for primary. And there's secondary as well, but it's a great option and great place to kind of get started with some mindfulness or breathing exercises to go forward.
And
go ahead.
They have loads of videos. So if you're, as a teacher, more wanting to just follow along with the students and practicing, the videos will walk you through, and so you don't have to actually lead that part if that's a part where you would rather have more guidance as well. So they're good videos.
Thank you. Okay, Jen, can you pop it back up again?
Yes, it's up on my side.
There's a slight
Right.
delay between YouTube and the Hangout. That might be what you guys are seeing.
Cool.
Hey, Josh.
Gotcha. So the fourth step, then after we've gone through our breathing technique, everyone recenter, refocus, and able to kind of be open and willing to share out what they feel comfortable with, especially with a lot of the uncertainties in today's world. Now it's looking on the ideas. So again, before you've created the circle, it's a proactive approach. We've pre-planned. We know what our purpose is. We have an idea kind of where that direction of our circle is going to go. So what would benefit us more so is one of the 4 different options we can go and create our circles with. So is it a check-in, check-out? Integrating circles with course content we talked about earlier, or that proactive behavior discussion. Games are always a great choice to have for circle ideas. We like to embed those in there to keep it lighthearted, to keep it ready to what role. But the best thing that I think has been very valuable is the guiding questions that the SEL department has helped build. These are really social emotional questions and topics, but this is for the first 6 weeks of school. If you like to use these are really built for everyone, for JCPS, for anyone really. But really to help guide us and transition us into the virtual classroom. For the first week, they give you a direct topic and then 5 questions or guiding questions, that you can choose and pick from that will help articulate that topic more so and that purpose of your circle. So when you start your lesson, again, having those expectations, norms up there, and then having one or multiple of those questions based on the topic you've chosen up and ready so you can start your circle right off the way. And again, this is linked under the title of this slide and circle ideas, so you can have that for yourself to use. It's a great resource. But again, that helps guide you through what your next and the purpose of your circle would be. Now, with games, there are several different options of games that we'll talk about here shortly. Jennifer, want to go to the next slide? So we'll talk about games here in a little bit, but the very last piece is that student voice again. So ideas for students or sharing for student responses. So how do we have students respond, and how do we give them that voice and that option of opinion?
And Josh, I'm not going to click on all these since there is a slight delay from our presentation and jumping over to YouTube. So if you click on all these links, you'll see examples of different ways that you can have your students share their responses. The very popular right now, the Jamboard. There's an example here that Laura used with her students last year. So you can click here and see that example and how she got her students engaged in that circle. You could use a Google form. This is an example from what Laura used last year as well. And she actually asked, if I'm correct, Laura, you asked the students ahead of time, and then you use that as a talking piece for the circle, the answers and the data that you collected. This is a link to several different little games or brain breaks that you could engage in with your students. But I will go ahead and click on this one. This is a little template that I'm pretty sure came from Klondike Elementary in the spring. And what they did is for this circle is the teacher put all their students' names in these boxes, and then they use this little moon. You can use whatever icon you want or is important to your content. And they would move the moon around the circle or the square in this case, rectangle maybe. And once the moon lands on your name, that's your time to talk. So it gives people some advanced notice when they're going to be called on, and not, a surprise. So this is just a template that we wanted to share with you that could be helpful in organizing your circle. But the other ones I'm not going to click on just so that, we don't have very much time left. I don't want to take it just clicking. So. But these are all linked to other ideas as well. And last but not least, tips for success. Establishing the norms. Once again, Josh did a really good job talking about that and the importance of tying that back to your school expectations. Making sure people feel comfortable. Once again, the cameras, having a way to participate, but without maybe having the camera on or having to speak. Because I even know some teachers, their camera might not be working right now, or their microphone doesn't sound very clear. So just having some other ways that people, kids and adults, can participate in your circle. If you're doing a check-in circle and there's a concern, make sure you check with that person after the circle, not while everybody else is in the circle at the time. And making sure that as we begin NTI 2.0, our first rounds of circles should be light topics. So what is your favorite food or your song? This will increase participation. Every student will have something to say on that topic, and it'll establish some safety and trust with your students and staff. So start light, and then as time goes on, you can dig a little bit deeper. Once again, we kind of linked all of our different resources here for you. So please jump on to this presentation and kind of click around, and we're here for any questions that you guys have even after the presentation. So please feel free to reach out. Laura, were there any other questions in the chat that hadn't gotten answered from our fabulous team in there?
No, everyone's questions were answered. One question that I would like to highlight was just that someone asked about middle school, how to keep 25 kids engaged. And one of the suggestions was that, just setting boundaries about the response time would be something to be able to go and move more quickly through the responses to be able to hold engagement. And then as well as your board that you presented, being able to help them move. And then someone else just commented, I thought it was a great comment. A lot of people were actually saying just being consistent using the circles was key.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. Yes, making sure you have a way to limit or manage responses. I have a 30-second response, you have a 3-word response, can also help speed up a circle when you have 25 or more students or adults within your circle. So that's a great suggestion. So I think that's all we have. So thank you guys for being with us today, and please feel free to reach out to any of us or anybody on our team. We'd be glad to help you all get started and begin building virtual relationships with NTI 2.0.
Alrighty, thank you for that great presentation, and I've just posted that presentation in the chat under the JCPS Digital Learning Channel account. It says this presentation, and there's a link there, so you have access to that presentation. And so now it is 9 o'clock, and that leads us into our 9 o'clock show, which is building authentic relationships with elementary age children in a virtual setting. All right, with Dr. Laura Donnelly. Hello, Dr. Donnelly. Hello?
Hi, Jenny.
Are you here?
Hi,
Awesome.
Laura. I had to say hi to you before I get off. Good to see you.
You too.
I'll watch your presentation on YouTube.
All right. Okay, Dr. Donnelly, are you ready to go?
I am. It's weird to hear that, Dr. Donnelly, but I'm ready.
All right. So if you could share your screen.
Okay.
Just a reminder, I will post the link to this presentation, guys, in the chat, and so you will have that. And this will be recorded and uploaded to the channel, so you can watch it on demand as well.
And I know that I need to do closed captions, so can you remind me how to do that?
Yeah, so you just go to View, go up to View, and Present.
Okay.
And then you're going to go down to, see where it says CC, click on the down arrow. And then if you could click on text size and make it large or extra large, that'd be great.
Okay.
Excellent. And then go from there.
Awesome. So welcome, everybody. This is Building Authentic Relationships Virtually with Elementary Age Students. And just a little bit about me and my background. I'm a professional school counselor at Kenwood Elementary, and I always say best school in JCPS. Love it there. If you have any follow-up questions, this is just some contact information. And I know that the presentation is linked on the digital learning channel page. So if you're able to follow along with that, that's great, because there are some interactive links that we can use. And if not, Brandy Kalin and Jill Hanley are helping me out in the chat box. And I think Michelle Searcy's there too. And Brandy has a list of those links that she can paste as we get there. So I'm going to be honest, whenever I hear somebody say, "What's your why?" I feel like it's overused, especially in the fitness industry. What's your why? I cringe a little bit every time I hear it, but I feel like it's so important right now as we start the school year, because we are all being pushed outside of our comfort zones. And the really awesome thing about that is that we're going to get to learn and grow if we choose to view it that way. But I'm assuming none of us started our jobs because of the paycheck. So what's your why? Why did you get into teaching? Why did you get into the field of education? If you want to interact with me, you can click on that picture of my why, or Brandy has the link for a Jamboard, and just give me a snippet. Why did you get into the field of education? And I really feel like connecting with that is going to help us make this a more successful school year, because we are all so pushed outside of our comfort zones right now. So if you don't care to take a minute to do that, that would be awesome. All right, the next thing is virtual home visits. So our teachers at Kenwood are doing virtual home visits right now. But if you've never done a home visit before, it's a really powerful way to build really authentic relationships with not only your students, but their families as well. And right now, this is a total team effort. It always is, but even more so right now. So you can ask parents questions like, what's your goal for your child's future? So that you know what their outlook is for their child. And then what do you want to see your child accomplish this school year? We started our drive-through orientations at Kenwood last night, and we had a parent who has had multiple kids come through Kenwood. Her last one is there now, and she said, "Miss Donnelly, I wish we could be back in person because the kids just get so much more." And I said, the experience of NTI in the spring was new for all of us, and I promise there are going to be more learning opportunities for your child. Even though we had some great learning opportunities in the spring, we've really stepped up our game. But I want to hear your feedback, so let me know what you think in a few weeks. And just having those open and honest conversations, this is new for all of us. And then, is there anything you'd like for me to know about your family? And then for the student, what's your goal for this school year? Is there anything you really want to focus on? Is there anything else that you would like for me to know? This is something huge that I feel like is not only important, this is something that we strive to do with our staff, but it's also super important for students. Take time to incorporate fun every single day. Right now, we're in the midst of 2 different pandemics, and lots of students have lots of stressors. So the more that you can engage them in just something fun, just to be a kid, you're going to build an authentic relationship, because you're engaging that child in something that's enjoyable, maybe something that they've not had a chance to do because of the different pandemics that are going on. So fun. It doesn't have to take very much time. You can do something really quick to incorporate fun to get students engaged before you start the lesson. So here are some ideas. One of our very favorite things that we've ever done with our staff, and I didn't post her picture here because I thought she'd be mad, but we have a picture of a staff member in the middle of a game called Cookie Monster. And it's a really quick thing where we just, we grabbed a tray of cookies from Sam's, which obviously you wouldn't be able to do in the virtual world, but you could say, hey, if you have a cookie in your house, or it could even be like, go find a sock if you're worried that kids wouldn't have a cookie, whatever it is, go find something, let's say a sock, put it on your forehead, and you're gonna wiggle it without using your hands. You gotta put your hands behind your back. You can make sure everybody has their cameras on, so you can make sure they're not using their hands, but they wiggle their face till they can get it down around to their mouth. And maybe you want to specify a clean sock, not a dirty sock. But that's a really fun game that we've used with staff, and I know kids would love that just as much. Show and tell. So our teachers did a really great job of engaging students in something fun in each of their morning meetings last year. And so they did some show and tell things, like by assigning a color. So I joined a 3rd grade teacher's morning meeting last year, and they had a show and tell based on the color yellow. And a student was laying in their bed with a yellow blanket that was their favorite. And that's just a really nice opportunity we get to see students in their homes. What's more personal and vulnerable than that? She was laying in her bed with her favorite yellow blanket. So we have a really unique opportunity to get to know our students on a much deeper level being in this virtual world. And then riddle of the day. I went into one classroom that was doing joke of the day, and that was really fun, but that can get really not PC very quickly and made me a little bit nervous. So I would just suggest that maybe you do a riddle of the day instead of a joke of the day, but just something to kind of lighten the mood. And Brandy just told me that the closed captions are not on, so
There you go.
fix that. I'm so sorry.
They're working now. Yeah, great.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right, so interactive lessons are the key. And I know the last presenters just talked a lot about Jamboard. I know Kahoot is a big deal, Flipgrid, all of those things. But making your lessons interactive is going to give you a better chance to get to know students, because you're not just talking to them, they're getting a chance to interact, and you're also going to engage them more. Interactive Google Docs and slides. So if you have a collaborative group effort and you're using a Google Doc, that could be a great way for students to collaborate even when you're not there. There are so many things, but the more you can interact with students virtually instead of just talking to them, the better your relationships are going to be. All right, so making things as personalized as possible is another great way to get to build relationships with your students. Morning meetings, if you are starting your Google Meet, I would suggest you frame it just like you do when you're in the classroom, when you get together in a whole group morning meeting to start your day. The teachers that had the most success of getting students to their classroom all framed their Google Meets in the same way. Just like they would for their morning meeting in their classroom, they started with an overview of the schedule for the day. They started with a circle, just like the last group of presenters was talking about. They did a circle where students got to share whether or not it was their show and tell item, whatever it may be. The students got to share, and then they reviewed their expectations for the day. So it looked very similar to what a morning meeting would look like in their classroom. And those were the teachers that had the most students show up in their classroom last year, because students were really engaged. Brandy shared this link for a learner profile with our staff that I loved. And that's a great way just to find out more about each student, so they can give you information about them, the things that they enjoy, what they feel like is their strength of learning, things like that. So you can play on that in this virtual world. I know Dr. Polio is really focusing on synchronous learning. So having the opportunity to have more small group check-ins or one-on-one check-ins. In the last presentation, they were talking about if a student shares something that's concerning whole group, addressing it in the whole group virtually probably isn't the best setting to do that, because as you know, they're in their home, so there are their family members around. It's not the intimate setting of a classroom. So checking in with that student one-on-one, reaching out to see if you can have a Google Meet just with them, that'll go a long way. Creating classroom norms together, just like you would at the beginning of the school year. So what are the norms that you want to have while students are on Google Meet? What are the norms that you want them to have for submitting work in Google Classroom? All of those things that you would do at the beginning of the school year, they're so important, if not more, to do those same things now that we're virtual. I know Bitmoji classrooms are the craze, but that's a great way to personalize. Personally, I love this Remove BG. That stands for background. If you've not already heard of that, Brandy shared this with us, I guess last week in an admin meeting. And so that's how I added my personal picture to that second slide. I love that because it's actually your kids get to see an actual picture of you implemented into the slides. All right, so mind maps. This is not something that JCPS students have access to right now, but I want to share it with you anyway, because there are some things that you can still use it for. We ended up doing a culture fair at Kenwood last year, and since students can't access it, their parents actually logged in with them, and then they would put a marker on My Maps. If you click on that link, or if you click on the link that Brandy gives you, you can actually do it right now. This was a really powerful tool, not only to engage our students, but to engage our families. And we really built some more authentic relationships with the whole family as a result of My Maps, because we have a large ESL population at Kenwood, the largest of any elementary school in the district. I think we're at 44%. But our families got to go in and mark on the map where they're from. And then during the culture fair, it was virtual. We kind of went through all of those different markers, and families were like glued to the screen because they could see the street view of where they were from. And it was kind of like they were actually walking down the street. And it was such an amazing experience to see not only our students engaged, but our families engaged. They were all glued to the screen, really interacting with My Maps. So if you want to take a minute to click on that link and plot where you're from, then we could see at the end of the presentation kind of where everybody that has attended today, where everybody's from. And then maybe I'll even have a chance to play with it to show you what it looks like. But this was a really great opportunity, especially if you teach students who are from another country, because it's a really cool way to get to see some of the actual places where they live. All right, so implicit biases have been a huge topic for our district, and rightfully so, because of the racial pandemic that we have happening right now in our city, across the country. So many things are happening. Implicit biases are important to remember because as we learn more about ourselves and the biases that we hold, those impact the relationships with students. And though they aren't outward biases or something that we necessarily set out to do, they still impact the relationships that we have with our students every single day. So some of the things that we talked about at Kenwood after going through the implicit bias training that the district provided, which was amazing. If you've not done that with your staff yet, I can't wait for you to do that, because it really is eye-opening. Some of the videos are really great. And if you've seen it, we talked a lot about the video with Tony and Anaya specifically in the classroom and how we would have responded to Tony. So the things that we talked about were having an accountability partner, somebody to come in and just observe you and see if they notice anything. Because if I had reflected back on that situation, I maybe wouldn't have even realized I was being biased against Tony and her contributions to the content. Having an accountability partner is a really great way to check your biases, to reflect on them every single day, because we want to make sure that all of our students feel included every single day. And it's tough because implicit biases we don't always recognize. So doing our part to really check those and make sure that they're not impacting our students in a negative way is going to give us the best opportunity to build those authentic relationships and really empower students. And then the last thing that's super important as a teacher, I preach self-care all the time. Self-care isn't selfish. You can't pour from an empty cup. There are so many things that are pushing us outside of our comfort zones right now. You may be working more hours than you've ever worked, because if you're on Class Dojo, if you're on School Connect, families can message you at really any hour and you don't have to respond. But I know a lot of people feel obligated because that's when their families are working. So you might be on call almost 24/7 right now, and that's stressful. You have to take time for yourself to be your best self for your students. So if that's going for a run, great. If that's just taking a walk outside, getting outside for a minute, if it's taking a long bath, whatever it is that makes you relax and just kind of decompress, you have to do that. A lot of us have little bitties at home right now, which makes it even more stressful while we're teaching our students. You have to give yourself at least 5 to 10 minutes every single day. And just also noticing when you're sitting at your computer, with your kids or working on a task that's really stressful, noticing your body. I know I had this conversation with someone else earlier this summer who said their jaw was getting really tight because they were clenching it while they were at their computer, not even realizing it, but paying attention to your own body language. So if you feel yourself doing something like that, reminding yourself with that self-talk, positive self-talk, to unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, things like that can go a long way, even though they're really simple, to help you have a more successful day. And when you're at the top of your game, you're going to be able to build those authentic relationships with students. All right, so feedback. I included a link for feedback, and Brandy, I did not send this to you, I'm so sorry. But if you're in the PowerPoint presentation, if you would click on that link and leave some feedback before you leave to let me know, was there anything that was a great takeaway that you'd like to know more about? Or was there something else that you wish would have been here? I'm always learning, continually learning and growing, and I want to make sure that I'm providing things that of value to you. So if you don't care to leave some feedback, I would really appreciate it. And then this is just the credits for Slide Mania. So I don't know if we have any questions, Brandy, Jill, Michelle.
It doesn't look like there are any outstanding questions necessarily. There was a lot of affirmation and positive feedback on your presentation, though. So, when you click on your My Maps, did you get any responses from that?
So that was awesome. See, I want to show this just because it's so amazing. Yes.
Awesome.
All right, so let's just see. Let me make this screen a little bit bigger. I don't know how to move this spot. Looks like we've got somebody from Russell, Kentucky, and here we'll take you to a link from Google Maps, and then you can change this to the street view. You can do a 3D version. And if you zoom in, you can actually kind of explore some of the streets, the local places in Russell, Kentucky. I don't think I've ever been there. There's a big middle school. We'll go out of this and back. Springfield, Kentucky. And then I didn't put mine in. So if you haven't used this before, I'm from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. So if I wanted to enter mine, I would add to map and then review in Google Maps. There are pictures over here you can look at. There are different 360 views of things. So you could actually have students plot some of their favorite things of their places in their hometown, take a tour. So this is the nature park. There are lots of different little unique museums and in Newtown, things like that. So this was something that, like I said, in our culture fair, we really enjoyed, but I thought it would be a great get to know you activity to see where everybody in your class is from. You could look at it on your morning meeting together to view some of the things that some of the places that your kids are from. And then take some time to explore that street view. You can play around with the maps ahead of time. The 3D view, you can zoom in, zoom out, see some of the popular places there. And it looks like Walmart's pretty popular in Newtown. Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that I enjoyed, the best things that I enjoyed from NTI 1.0 in the spring, and I can't wait to use that again.
Absolutely. And so thank you for your presentation today. And I feel like the first two presentations have been all around the concept of digital citizenship. And even though we're not necessarily saying that phrase, digital citizenship is a huge part of being in this digital world. And when I started today, I talked about a colleague of mine that said 5 or 6 years back, the most important thing you will teach your children in front of you, your students, is digital citizenship. And it's just never been more real or important than right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Our kids are going to be on their Chromebooks and they're going to be exploring in whatever capacity. So the more that you can guide them in their exploration, the better off we're going to be, because we don't want kids on certain websites, right? So if you give them the opportunity to play with something like MyMaps, or if you give them some different things on Flipgrid that they could be doing, or on a Kahoot, we want to keep them engaged in really meaningful things, because they're going to be exploring whether you want them to or not.
Right.
So what are the expectations we are setting for them, and how can we keep them engaged in meaningful conversations?
And it's also about teaching kids how to interact with each other in an online world. You think about the Google Classroom comments section. When you post something in your Google Classroom, do your kids have the ability to interact with each other in that Google Classroom? Because when we talk about digital citizenship, it's important to model that. You know, what does a comment look like? What does specific feedback look like? And so it's. I used to say when I was teaching digital citizenship to teachers, you would not walk into a kindergarten class and hand a kid a book and say, "Here, read." You know, you have to teach them, right? It's the same way with digital citizenship. You have to model that. You have to build those expectations, and then the students will learn that digital citizenship. So it's not something that just happens. So thank you for your contribution today, Dr. Donnelly.
Thank you so much. And I just pulled this back up. That was the picture that I did the remove BG on. I think it's just a really great way to personalize it so they can see your face as much as possible.
Yeah, I love remove.bg. I know they've made it premium to a point now. It's like you can get so many free or something. It's like everything. Everything's free for a while, but still you can use it for pretty much what you need it for.
For sure.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at today's virtual learning schedule. 9:30, we've got supporting the mental health needs of your special needs students with Shauna Paul. At 10 o'clock, we've got referring students for mental health supports during virtual learning with Tyler Swim and Elise Christensen. We've got, bullying prevention supports at 10:30 with Steve Giddings and Brittany Knipp. We've got 11, building relationships virtually. So again, that's kind of what we were just talking about. How do you cultivate those digital relationships? That's with MTSS Behavior, Shannon Neighbor, and Ronzel Smith. And then 11:30 we are open. We take a long lunch, and then we are back in the afternoon at 12:30. You can access any of these presentations by going to this schedule, which is on jcps.me/NTI, and then just clicking on the blue link, the blue hyperlink, and that will take you to the presentation. And I will be posting links to presentations throughout the morning in the chat as we progress through them. All right, so up next we've got supporting the mental health needs of your special needs students with Shauna Paul. Shauna, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. All right. So you could you tell us about yourself? What's your role? What's your title?
Yeah. So yes, my name is Shauna Paul. I have been with JCPS for 12 years. I began as a MSD teacher in an elementary school. And then I was at Stone Street and then moved to Churchill Park. So Churchill Park is an all special needs school. And as I went into counseling, I moved on to be a frisky, just to gain more experience. I know that's a weird little change, but it was actually one of the best moves for me because I really learned resources that I might not have if I dove right into counseling. And then I moved on to counseling back at Churchill Park. So I'm the counselor there and found my way back home, I say.
Wow, so you really have a wide perspective on this issue. Awesome. So are you going to be sharing slides with us today?
I am.
Awesome. And so if you could bring those up. And then do you know how to turn on your closed captioning?
I do not. I was just trying to play with it.
Perfect. I will walk you through it.
Okay. Can we share my screen first?
Yes, go ahead and share your screen.
All right, can you see me?
Yes, and then you're going to go to View and Present. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, if you could click that, see where it says Hide, see where it says Stop Sharing Hide. If you could click Hide, and then right next to Closed Captioning, click the down arrow. And then you're going to choose text size. Could you make those large or extra large? Perfect. And then to do that one more time. I don't know if it actually clicked it. Okay, good. And then if you could start saying something, maybe we'll see if it works.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay. Try clicking on your closed captioning again. Is there a...
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
There it is.
Awesome. You got it. All right. Good to go. Thank you so much. Here
All
we go.
right. So I know Michelle is on here. Michelle Searcy, she's going to help me with the chat boxes. I just wanted to do a little activity that I like to do before some of my groups, and you can also do with your instruction. So, and I'll talk about later on why that's important. But I wanted to start by, you can tell me in the chat box how you're feeling using a weather condition. So I am partly sunny. I had a few clouds over top of me this morning trying to figure out technology, but we're all good and the sun's peeking out and I'm ready to go. So put in the chat box how you're feeling using the weather condition. And again, that's just a fun little way to see how your kids are doing. And that may be a little bit much for some of the smaller kids. This presentation is going to basically be for all ages, but the activities you do is based on individual needs. So again, that's just a fun way to check in. Today, we're going to go over simple strategies and gain better understanding. So we support the mental health needs of our students with disabilities, and this is also good amongst all children also, especially during this pandemic and unknown time. I did want to share this book called You Matter. It's really neat. I love how the front of this book shows cultural differences. And if we have time to read it, I will read it at the end because I always love sharing a book, even for adults. But I want to make sure we get through this presentation first. But I bought it on Kindle. And if you don't already know about that, if you buy books on Kindle, it shows the pictures and you can slide through them just as you were a slide deck. So I'll also show you that as well. So these strategies support understanding, offer opportunities for expression, prioritize coping and calming skills, maintain routines, build new routines, foster connections, even from a distance, and be aware of changing behaviors, crisis supports. So before we dive into these strategies, what grade level do we have mostly in this group? Can you tell me that quickly in the chat box? And Michelle, if you don't mind to share just a little bit. So Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. So what grade level do we have? Mostly we've got. I feel like somebody's got their audio on from the. There we go. Perfect. It looks like we've got a lot of elementary school. I'm seeing like Mill Creek and Hartstern in
Okay.
there. Lake Elementary, Chenoweth Elementary.
Great. So I'll definitely go through that book. And just as I'm talking about different activities, I wanted to make sure I'm speaking to our audience. So I wanted to share this quote. It says, "Similar to everyone, it's a work in progress. We are literally figuring it out day by day. But the good news is we've relied on each other as partners and collaborators in a really deep way, and that's where the success is coming from." So I like this quote because we're used to collaborating, but we're also planners, and right now it's really hard to do that. And it's even harder for our students with disabilities and even more so our parents. So it's really important to come together and collaborate and just dive into those relationships and try to build on them in an organic way. I know that's hard this time. It's just hard for me, so I can only imagine how it's hard for our students with disabilities and even more so our parents. So we're going to talk about our parents too some during this presentation. So the first little slide I wanted to show more of is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I just wanted to reshare this. I know all of us have seen this, but we often forget that this is still our job during this remote learning time. We aren't face to face with our students in real time. And so it's easy to forget that that's part of our job too. And, you know, that's unfair sometimes to us, that that's our job to keep our kids safe and make sure they're getting their needs. But it is still our job to make sure our kids are getting their needs met. And, you know, as the slide said before, if their needs aren't met, they're not ready to learn. And so there's different ways that you can do this, you know, in a nonchalant way. You know, even like in the beginning of a session or a one-on-one session or a group, you can ask questions like, what did you eat for breakfast? Or how did you sleep? Those are just good ways to kind of check in. And you'll see those that are more quiet or just not acting themselves. And then again, just building those relationships with our parents, making sure that they're doing okay, because we want our students to be ready to learn. And there may be simple things that you can, you know, let your counselor know or your Frisky know that we can help with at home. I sure know my school, you know, our families, you know, are struggling. And so that's really important for us to step back and understand that instruction is important. It's our job, and that's what I think a lot of us are worried about, is getting behind. But the main thing is their basic needs are being met. So I just got a text message from Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. So again, I just wanted to make sure I kind of addressed that during this unpredictable time, it's really important to challenge ourselves and dig deeper with our relationships and make sure we're understanding if our kids have their needs met. And so speaking of their needs, students with disabilities have unique needs. If you can think about some of the needs of our students, and I automatically think when I was at Southern High School, because I had a background in special needs, they were drawn to me, and they loved to talk. And in some ways they use their voice, in other ways I let them use their own communication system, whether that be a device or sign language. And again, just being able to open up and tell me about their day. So I just wanted you to kind of think about the different needs of your students that you currently have, whether they're in a special needs classroom or they're mainstreamed in your own classroom, because I know we have a lot of those. My son has some needs that are different. So just because they're not labeled doesn't mean they don't have their special and unique needs. So one of the first key things to do to help support their mental health is support understanding. So, even though we're 6 months into this pandemic, there are still varied levels of understanding of COVID. So still answering questions on why we're in remote learning, why you're not able to be in person, how can you help stay healthy, and then going into every day you meet with them, what to expect during NTI, creating those systems, using concrete language and terms. I sometimes, even when I talk, I think I am explaining it correctly, but to someone else, it's not. So using concrete language and terms, using visual supports and cues. And again, those are typical things that we can do for all students, but more specifically our students with special needs. The next thing I wanted to talk about was offering opportunities for expression throughout instruction. So like I said before, having those check-ins, it's really cool to check in with a question, just allow them to speak. And you can, a lot of their feelings of fear and frustration and worry will go down if you give them ways to express themselves. I know that you learned in the last presentation on how to engage students better, but use some of those things to allow our students to express themselves. And remember that each of them have unique needs, such as communication needs. Some may use their voice, some may use devices, some may need for you to challenge them and question them. So just offer those opportunities for expression. Do I have any questions or comments so far?
Nothing that I'm seeing in the chat. Just a lot of people giving positive affirmation.
Okay, great. All right, so the next step, prioritizing and coping calming strategies. So, I know I need these a lot myself. So a lot of our students with disabilities have that repertoire of skills that they already use in your classroom. Some use rocking chairs, some take listening to music, taking deep breaths, taking time to move, accessing a favorite snack. There's things that you all already use and they already use. So just reminding them to do them at home as they're on the computer or they're doing activities because they're going through all these different emotions. So just reminding them and reinforcing that you already have a lot of these skills in place. And we'll talk a little bit more on some of the things that we can use to remind them. Going back to choose the student's calmest day to initiate instruction. That goes back to building the relationship with the parent and saying, it's really hard in the afternoons. Can we meet in the morning? Or do you have strategies to help me more during his calmest day? And then create a concrete and visual routine to support these coping and calming strategies. So we may use lists and check-offs and in different visual cues at school, but we also can support those at home and make them at school and send them at home, just to create new visuals at home and ask the parent, are they experiencing a certain behavior when you need to get up and go to work and it's time for instruction? They just want to lay in bed. And so forth. So again, create new things that they can do to help calm themselves. And we'll go over a little bit more strategies in other areas at the end. Ensure the student is using these strategies. So again, if you can see them rocking too much or getting agitated, again, reinforcing and reminding, okay, are you taking your deep breaths? Are you counting to 10? Because it's really difficult, because that's normally our job, is to help facilitate calming and coping strategies, and help the family create those self-management plans when they're feeling anxious, and sharing what is making them most anxious. All right, so one of the big things when we talk about calming strategies, a lot of our students with disabilities like their routines, and that's why it's really hard for them. You know, and again, I'm like that too. I need my structure. So help the families maintain routines. So we're still waking up at a decent time. We're still going to sleep. Your daily living skills have a checklist of, you know, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, using those task analysis and visual schedules. And they may look different from what you did at school, but try to create those things that you would at school for home, if the parent is wanting to use those. I think that if you get them used to it in a regular instruction day when we're in school, it's helpful putting that in use at home. And you can talk a lot about those at parks, even when we're not in a pandemic. I always like to send those things at home and the pictures that we're using. This is an example of a visual schedule, but it doesn't have to be in depth of this. It can be a checklist and so forth. And then I put here an example of a movie night. So I've had to do this for my own family, is create our own routines. So we're having some sense of structure. And a lot of times people don't want to do a family movie night or things like that because they're in front of a screen. But if that's something that they've always done, I suggest keep doing that, and then add other things like a family game night. So again, these are just things that you can let your parents know that you want to help them with in keeping that routine going that you've always done. It's important for our students. And I like I said, I said myself, when I'm doing NTI with my own kids last school year, and when I didn't follow the schedule, everything broke loose. It was a wash. But when I had my schedule out and they were able to check off what they were doing, it was better. And like I said, that's the typical learner. We're talking about our learners with unique needs. So it's very important to keep the structure and routines and base it on their specific needs. It may look different for each of your students. And then as we're building new routines, talk to your parents and students about transitioning away from the devices when it's not time for instruction online. I know that's difficult for some children and adults because that's our time. But if you establish like clear and consistent routines, it will be easier. You can use visual timer, visual countdown systems, a simple alarm. You also can, another good way to build routines is offer choices. This gives them a sense of autonomy and motivation. So last night, for example, I wanted my kids to wake up in the morning. I gave them a choice. Do you want to wake up and draw or color or read a book, or do you want to go outside and take a walk? But just offering choices to get them motivated and get going. Again, I'm talking about a typical learner in my house, but it's even more important for our students with unique needs. And then lastly, another way to build routines is create a to-do list. Again, it goes back to creating those expectations, reducing distractions, and letting them know what to expect every day, and they're able to check off. This is what I have to do today. And hopefully the parents will see less of those feelings of anxiousness and worry, and even behaviors, because I know that all these needs and feelings of frustration may create behaviors that often weren't seen at home. We've talked a lot, some about the behaviors. So we need to really foster those connections, even from a distance. Individuals with special needs are more susceptible to social isolation and loneliness, and this may be worsened during the quarantine. So explicit facilitation to ensure social connections to continue is key. So that may be difficult for some of you to create. It doesn't come as organically, and then in front of a screen it's even harder, but using those engaging ways that you've learned in other presentations is really key, and creating different ways to communicate with your family so they are comfortable. I know that you can build on these opportunities by just saying hello, not during actual instruction, just saying, how is Bobby's day going? How are you feeling? Ask them how they're doing and how you can help them. If they feel like that you're there for them as well, it again creates that relationship of trust. And I can't say that enough, that relationships is one of the key things in all of this, and how we're going to be successful with instruction is our relationships with parents and our students, and especially with our students with unique needs, and because they're struggling and they're seeing possible behaviors that they've never seen before, lashing out at them. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about crisis. And then again, going to evaluate needs of individual student basis. So, the levels of disabilities ranges in our school, and so it may look different for each of our families. And I talk about doing a drive-by. That may not be something that your principal wants to do, but you can simply, go by the house and not even get out of your car. You can just say hello. I know a lot of my students are driven by music, and you can go by and play their favorite song out of their car. And again, those are just simple ways to create those connections, and not always in front of the screen. You can send little postcards. I know a lot of you have probably already done that. We're good at these things already, but it's just fostering those connections and just thinking outside of the box, so we can build on our relationship. So some of the things that we're almost done. I know it's almost time for questioning. So some of the behavior changes that our children may be experiencing when they're anxious and depressed. They may have a change of sleeping pattern. They may have those increasing repetitive behaviors or OCD, excessive worry, decreases of self-care, irritability, increased agitation. And again, the parents may be seeing extreme behaviors that they've never seen before, because we have them a lot of their day and doing things that they don't love to do. So the parents may not be used to that. I don't know if you all have had those conversations with parents and they're like, well, Maggie doesn't do that at home, but that's because they've always been doing what they want to do at home. But now they're learning at home, so they may be doing all those things. And like I said, that we don't know if they're sad always, because they may not be able to express themselves. So creating those ways to, use these strategies and help them communicate that, and helping us be aware of all these things will help us see if they have changes of behavior and signs of anxiety and depression. So if you see these behaviors, obviously we're all experiencing anxiousness, but if it's getting to a crisis and you're seeing a sleep pattern and parents are overwhelmed with negative behaviors, it may need additional supports from a mental health provider, a medical provider. They may already have a therapist, a psychologist, or even a psychiatrist. So that first line is always talk to your counselor referral process. Each of you all should probably know that process. A lot of times the counselor may be able to reach out to the family and talk to them about different ways to help strategize their feelings of anxiety and worry, but they may need more in depth. Through suicide prevention, I wanted to add that to our presentation. There's a text home crisis counselor. Again, our parents may need this as well. Our students may already have case managers, an advocate, or other service providers. So as we're building our relationships with families, you may already know they have contact with a service provider or a therapist. So just reminding them to utilize them more. Have you reached out to your therapist lately? Have you made an appointment? So I know that our parents know that, but they're sometimes overwhelmed with so much. They forget that they utilize their resources. I also have on here our link for employee assistance, because we're right there in the trenches with them and experiencing those things. I put on here a couple resources. If we have time, I can go over them. But this one's a virtual calm room. It's so neat. Please go through these resources and go and go through the websites, because there's so many cool things that even adults can utilize as well. The Calm Zone is much like that. It's just a different format. One-on-one time for parents, this just goes over other strategies to help prioritize schedules. There's free apps that we can utilize for calming. Here's a calming activity to do with our students, a brain hookup, how to do our crossover. And so just utilize some of those resources that I put in the website or the slide deck, because I don't have time to go through them, but I really want you all to take a look at them because they're full of really good resources. I wanted to end by just letting you guys know that you matter. As a parent and educator, it's easy to focus on how the uncertainty of this time is impacting our children, but this pandemic has been considerably impactful on me, and I'm sure it has you too. So prioritize your own self-care. You matter. So I'll share this book real quick. Again, I love how it's culturally diverse on the front page. Right now, during this time, it's really neat to be able to see other students like ourselves on the front page. So you matter. You matter. The small stuff too small to see. Those who swim with the tide and those who don't. The first to go and the last, you matter. When everyone thinks you're a pest, when something is just out of reach, when everyone is too busy to help, you matter. If you fall down, if you have to start all over again, even if you're really gassy, you matter. Sometimes home is far away. Sometimes someone you love says goodbye. Sometimes you feel lost and alone, but you matter. Old and young, the first to go and the last, the small stuff too small to see, you matter. So I really love that. It's just a simple book, but it helps us remind ourselves that we matter as well. So sorry I went over a little bit. Do we have any questions?
No questions in the chat. Again, lots of positive affirmation. You did not go over. You actually have 3 minutes left, so you're good to go on that.
Oh, okay.
So you did excellent. So thank you for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Again, I posted the link to this presentation in the chat on YouTube under the JCPS Digital Learning channel account, and so you can click on that and have access to this presentation. Thank you so much. And so that leads us into our 10 o'clock hour, which is referring students for mental health supports during virtual learning. Okay, so today is all about mental health. So excellent. So that's Tyler Swim and Elise Christensen. Tyler and Elise, are you here with us today?
Yep, I'm with you.
Perfect. Awesome. So who's going to be sharing their screen today?
That'll be me.
Excellent. Are you familiar with how to turn on closed captioning?
I am not.
All right, so I'll walk you through it. So go ahead and share your screen.
You got that?
I see me. Do you have slides? If you go to your slides, there you go. Perfect. Awesome. So now you're going to go to, yep, you did it. And you're going to go to, where is your closed captioning? Huh. Are you, Are you in Google Chrome or are you in a different browser?
I'm not in Google Chrome.
I think that's the problem. Can you exit out of that real quick, and then do you have Google Chrome on your computer?
I do not.
Okay. Then we'll just roll with it. That's the thing. Is Chrome.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Closed captioning is only available in Google Chrome. So awesome. So if you want to take it away, Tyler, go for it.
All right. So I just want to start by doing an intro. My name is Tyler Swim. I'm a mental health practitioner. This is my second year. I'm at Middletown Elementary and Chansey Elementary. Prior to that, I was with Seven County School Based for about 6 or 7 years. And then
Good morning. My name is Elise Christensen. I am also an LCSW. I am a mental health practitioner. I was at Seven Counties prior to coming to this job for about 10 years. Last year was my first job as a mental health practitioner here at JCPS. So we wanted to get started by just acknowledging the stuff that's going on in the world. Keep losing my slides though. Okay. So we are right now in the middle of both a global and a racism pandemic. Both of these pandemics are likely having a huge effect on our staff and our students. Students have been at home much more, which means they're seeing and hearing news about the seriousness of this pandemic. They also are seeing the lives lost and impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that we're experiencing. And we'll talk more about what the impact of being at home is for our students. Our students have also likely heard or witnessed either via social media or the news or even possibly in person, the violent acts targeting Black people in America. These have been going on for years, unfortunately. It seems as the more technology we get, the more we get to see them live on social media, which is definitely very traumatic to watch, especially I would think as a Black person in America. So in addition to witnessing those events, we also are seeing the racial uprising that's occurring, which although is so necessary in this country to try to undo some of the racism that's going on, it's really hard for our younger kids especially, but also adolescents to really process and understand, especially with the rioting and the looting that goes along with the peaceful protest. So just processing that can be really challenging for our students.
And another thing with students being home during NTI, they may have experienced or witnessed other things as well that they might not have if at school. Things like arguments between parents or family members, or our older students, mainly like our middle and high schoolers, who have added responsibilities when at home, some of which are having to watch their younger siblings and having to help them with their NTI coursework. Changes in parent-guardian mood and behavior, especially if parent-guardian has lost their job due to this pandemic, as well as changes in health or nutrition. Many JCPS students, their most significant and routine meals are provided by JCPS. And while a significant amount of schools are still offering food and nutrition services to students during this time, not all families have access to transportation and have a way to make it to school to get those meals. Another thing that I wanted to talk about with you all are NTI counseling request forms. For NTI 2.0, counselors and MHPs at every school have had to create a virtual platform for counseling request forms. And I have posted a couple links in this presentation of what those look like, and I was going to show those to you all. I want to make sure it works so I can show that. So let me give it a minute. Okay, there we go. So this is what a counseling support request form looks like. And what I've done is I've added my school's counselor. This is an example of the one I created for Middletown. So me and the counselor are on here, and this is just a way where anybody can request. It can be a teacher, a parent, or even a student themselves. And they click on that link that I have also on my school's site that I created. They put in their email address, they put who they are making the request. If it's an adult making a request, they can put in how they know that student and the best way to contact. And then student information, which is optional, is given student name, last name, best way to contact the student, what grade they're in. Again, this is for elementary, but middle school and high school MHPs and counselors will have it with proper grade on there for them. And then what the concern is on there. Additional information you want to share, whether or not it's an emergency. And then we also have, in case it is an emergency, obviously 911, or there's also suicide prevention hotline on there, just for access and means there. And just, it's important to know that if it's not an emergency, it can take maybe 2 to 3 days for a counselor or MHP to get back to you all on that. The other thing I want to show you is an example of this Google site that all MHPs have been asked to create. And this is the Middletown page I created. And basically all this has on is the intro as to who I am, has ways to contact me, has my Google Voice number on there. Then there's a line in here about, is your child interested in receiving services through Middletown? There's a link to that counseling request form I just showed you. And then there's also a link to a telehealth consent form that all families must sign in order for MHPs to meet with their students. And there's just all kinds of other information on here as well for what a child needs might look like if they need therapy services. There's links in here for videos of COVID-related coping and other resources. I've created a YouTube channel and a playlist. Families can access that way. And then there's just other links down here based off different mood or behaviors, and just all kinds of resources just students, families, or even teachers can use. I've also reached out to teachers to ask them to include that in their Google Classroom as well. So that's definitely an option that I think many MHPs have on the table this year. And just, if you're a teacher, if you're staff at the school, reach out to your MHP and your school counselor, because there's many things that we're trying to do this year to better collaborate with you all during NTI 2.0. And know too that in those referral request forms, many MHPs and counselors may also need a follow-up form to teachers after counseling request has been made. So if we get a request from a student or a family member, we might be reaching out to you directly to get a little more knowledge that you might have and that you might be able to provide us.
I think our slides got mixed up, but here are a couple other ways the pandemic could be impacting students. Homelessness, with the economic crisis that we're in, a lot of people have lost their jobs or had changes in jobs, and so those things can lead to homelessness, food insecurity. As we mentioned, our students are experiencing a loss of their normal routines. That's both, at school and at home. Everything is a little different right now. They have decreased social interactions. Their sense of safety in the world could be impacted. A lot of students, especially the younger ones, and even our high schoolers, may not have really been aware of the racism pandemic. And obviously COVID is new, but just hearing about all these things and having it in the news all the time can really impact your sense of safety, especially if you have a loved one who has passed away or been harmed as a result. They might be having they and teachers and staff and all adults, everybody might be having difficulty sleeping. With kids, you might see behavioral regressions due to the changes in routine. You know, you might have little ones who aren't, who are acting maybe more like babies, or they're acting younger than normal, or some kids who have disabilities who might be having a harder time. You might see some regressions in their progress. There's also, when kids are home more, as we know, there's a potential for increased exposure of abuse or community violence. Schools are often our kids' safe place. It's where they feel safe and they get away from all of that. And then when we think about guardians and technology, I mean, that is a whole layer of stress I know that we're all feeling trying to learn about technology, but our parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody, they might be having a really hard time accessing the virtual learning platforms and understanding how to work those and make sure their kids are on at the right time, which we could see some struggles there as well.
What I want to talk about now is indicators of when a student might need counseling or mental health supports. And some things to consider would be a sudden or significant drop in participation or students withdrawing. If you have the same student in class this school year and notice a significant change in their behaviors, their personality, or if you see a quote unquote different student, if the student is frequently talking about the pandemics and related fears and anxieties they may have, including expressing concern about when and if we return to in-person instruction, as well as things they may be hearing or seeing on the news, as well as witnessing in their own community. If a student is displaying hopelessness, if a student is frequently complaining of being tired, stressed, and overwhelmed. And another thing I think that's very important to consider, especially during this NTI 2.0, are kindergartners, sixth graders, and freshmen, students who are beginning at a brand new school virtually. And it's gotta be a very unique and interesting experience for them. And one example I just want to share is my parents' next door neighbor is a sixth grader getting ready to start, and she just does not know what to think, is worried about going back to school, and is worried about making a jump if it does get returned to in-person this year, from going to elementary school with maybe 400 to a middle school with over 1,000 people. And I think that's one thing that we definitely as educators have to keep our eye on and have to be aware of. And as teachers, I would encourage you all, just if you notice any child, any of your students, maybe just needing something and you just can't quite put your finger on it, reach out to your MHP, reach out to your counselor. That's one of the things we're here for.
Okay, I'm going to talk about some more indicators that you might see in your classrooms. You would see them a lot more easily, obviously, than virtually, but I'm going to try to make sure to apply it to the virtual setting as well when I talk about these things. So these are some indicators that some students might need some extra support. So the first one is poor academic achievement. This one might be a little bit easier to see during the virtual, classrooms. You're going to see kids who maybe just aren't interested in school, have no motivation. They're not showing up to your scheduled classes. They're not turning in work. You might see grades dropping. This is especially something that you will notice if you do happen to have the same student in class. I know we mentioned before, like, if a student is acting differently than they normally do. So, maybe you had a student who really was a high achiever last school year, but now this year you're noticing a decline in grades. That might be a good indicator that that student might need some additional support, at least some problem solving there. Another thing you might notice is anxiety.
Why is this not?
So you might notice a student who is tearful or expressing worries a lot, is feeling really oversensitive. Some physical symptoms. So if you are doing some kind of check-in with your students or some time where you're just kind of chatting with them, You might listen for students complaining of headaches or stomach aches, or just feeling worried. That might be something you listen for. If it's a consistent, I think we're all worried sometimes. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about a consistent, like repetitive, they can't seem to shake those worries. Another thing you might notice in terms of the physical symptoms is if a student has to use the bathroom, they have to get up a lot, they have to, they can't seem to stay seated. That could be another sign that you notice. Signs of depression, being sad, irritable, tearful again. Reports of difficulty sleeping or eating or feeling hopelessness. This is going to be a little bit hard to identify. This is something that we probably would identify more through a check-in or just general conversation with your students. You might also notice with depression some of that poor academic achievement, a decline in grades. Often with depression, especially with older students, but probably across the board, is that decline in motivation. And it's more of a decline in energy. They just don't feel like they have the energy to do anything, even if that means getting out of bed in the morning. So those are some things to watch for. Anger, that's going to be kind of the kiddos who are verbally or physically aggressive, having discipline problems, destructive, oppositional or non-compliant. Again, you might notice them in your Google Meet classrooms, being defiant or oppositional, refusing to do things that you ask them to, not following the rules of the group, things like that. Parent report can be helpful too for all of these things. I want you to remember, I know you'll be having some conversations with parents periodically, so kind of keeping your ears open for these things. Not that you have to assess these things, but just kind of keep your ears open. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity, you're going to see restlessness, impulsiveness, very easily distracted, short attention span, poor organizational skills. So again, watch for kids who maybe are coming in late a lot or get their schedule confused or don't seem to have their materials together, miss an assignment. Those types of things can be an indicator of that. Poor peer relationships, being isolated, everyone's kind of isolated. I think this one's going to be hard to identify virtually, but if you notice anybody bullying other people, not getting along with others, argumentative with peers, if you're doing group work, those can all be indicators that somebody might need to have some additional support. Conduct issues, which include lying, stealing, fire setting. Again, you probably won't see that very much with everybody at home. But again, if you hear about it, please make sure to reach out to your MHP or counselor. Some attention-seeking behaviors could be typical for sure, because we're dealing with kids. So again, this is going to be a pattern. This isn't going to be the kid who just like occasionally goofs off because they're bored. This is the kid who is consistently showing goofiness, silliness, being the class clown, or having inappropriate peer interactions. And then family stress or adjustment difficulties. Anytime you hear about any divorce, death, substance abuse, or chronic illness in the family, that could be an indicator that a student might need to be connected with a counselor or mental health support. That doesn't mean they need therapy. It just means they might need some more check-ins to assess that, and we would take care of that for you guys. And then with our older students, obviously you want to listen for any substance use or risky behavior on their end, sneaking out. I don't know how much. I think sometimes teachers have a really close connection with their students and do hear about some of this stuff. Sometimes they just hear the rumors and the gossip, I think. Again, that happens more in person, I would imagine, especially in the high school level. But you might hear something about that, and that can be an indicator that the student might need some extra support. So again, just know that these are things that we want you to listen for. They're not things that you have to assess for. We will, if you have any of these concerns about a student, your counselor or mental health practitioner will help you with those things and figure out if they really need it.
One other
Our next
thing-
slide, we just wanted to give you some kind of examples of what we saw during NTI 1.0. I work at a high school, so some things that I saw specifically with the students I worked with is they were struggling with some grief. They had the loss of their sports seasons. They had, my seniors especially, you know, prom, they didn't have prom or graduation, in-person graduation. Some pep rallies were canceled and things like that. So they had a lot of grief around missing out on that like normal high school experience. A lot of them had difficulty turning off their brains, being able to unplug, especially in the evening. I had a lot of students who were really engaged in social media and just having a constant flood of news about COVID and Breonna Taylor and all of that. It just, they were constantly consuming that information and they had a really hard time shutting off, you know, their brains to kind of get into school mode or to get into, you know, like a sleeping situation where they need to go to bed. And they had a huge loss of motivation. I saw a lot of kids struggling to participate in virtual learning. Some things that you as teachers might want to keep an eye on is, are students' cameras on? Are they vocally participating or in the chat participating? You know, that can show you whether or not a student's engaged, as you all know. But so those are just some of the things I saw last year with my older students. I'm sure there's hundreds of more things, but that's the examples I could think of for you all today.
And then some of the things from that, I don't know, I'm getting an echo, I don't know why. Some of the things going on with elementary school cases from NTI 2.0 that I saw was anxiety, students frequently expressing fear and worry and just taking in a bunch of news, like Elise mentioned, talks of COVID and fearing if when school resumes. And routine, I think, is another big one for some of our students, is that some students need socialization and they thrive on it. So creating a social time for them to interact with teachers and peers is very important, like maybe creating a virtual lunch bunch every so often. Also, just quick changes in behaviors, constantly feeling down, lack or sudden change in participation. There were several teachers last year who I was talking to at their Google Meets. Their student wouldn't really say much or do much. Their camera would often be off, and that was different from what they were seeing when things were in person. One thing too I'd like to add for this is last year during our NTI, I created my own Google Voice number and reached out to families and some even students. I just let them know that this was a place where they could reach out to me. And one thing, if you do that, I would recommend that if you use Google Voice, you can set up a time to turn off all notifications. So you can pretty much set your phone to, I'm going to look at it right now on my phone so I can share exactly what it says. So if you were to go into your settings, one of the things on it is you can set it to do not disturb. So one thing I would recommend for teachers that's important to do, especially during NTI, is boundaries as well, and is to turn your phone to do not disturb at a certain time every evening, turn it on to a certain time every morning, because this NTI 2.0 isn't just going to be a focus on the students. It also needs to be a focus on teachers and staff. We don't want to overwhelm you with anything, and it's going to be important to take care of yourself as well, which another important thing for me to say is MHPs are not just at schools for students. We are also here as a resource for teachers. So do not be afraid to reach out to your school's MHP. We are here for you as well. And that kind of leads right into using school and community supports. So use your connections and school resources like mental health practitioners and counselors to discuss student needs and concerns, as well as your own needs and concerns. Consider providing a link to Google Classroom to counselors and MHPs for them to join and have a presence in some of your meetings every so often. If you're unsure of whether one of your students could benefit from counseling or mental health support, reach out to your school's counselor or MHP. And then instituting a check-in system in order to build a relationship with students and let them report how they feel. as well as using community partners like 7 Counties, Peace Hospital, or Crossroads.
And I just wanted to add a note onto that slide that Peace Hospital and the Brook are acting as normal, and they might be doing some things virtually, but they are running as normal. So, we'll still be doing sending students for assessments there. And I think Crossroads is actually going to be able to do in classroom school as part of their program and therapy and such. They're able to use some social distancing. So I think that those are good resources to know about. Okay, so we talked about how there's a lot of indicators, and I mentioned when I was going through that kind of longer slide that it's going to be hard to see some of these things virtually. When we're in our classrooms in front of students, we are with them all day, every day sometimes, or if you're in an older grade, at least an hour a day or every other day, whatever, but you see them, you see what they're doing. So one thing that could be helpful during NTI would be to do some check-ins, maybe once a week, or maybe less, or maybe more, however you feel like you know your class and your students, or will learn to know them. So some examples, you can use check-ins for a variety of things. You can, it's really easy to make a quick Google form. I know you guys have a lot on your plates, but this could be a way to connect with your students, make sure they're understanding their classwork, and at the same time check in on their feelings, their sleeping routines, how they're sleeping, whether or not they have food or other resources maybe they need connections with. You can keep them so simple. You can just even add a quick check-in question at the bottom of their assignment so it cues you into how they're feeling. So if you're giving them virtual work or paperwork, just having them right at the bottom, or do a little checkbox of how they're feeling. That can be a good way to cue you in, and also a good way to help you get to know your students. I mean, maybe you just do a check-in on some of their favorite things, or, just to kind of build that rapport and that relationship. But the image on the right of your screen, the mental health check-in, obviously that's not a Google form, I just copied it. But it has a really great, it just shows how simple they can be. And it would let you know very easily what they need. Another option is this Google form. And it is, again, it was made by one of my fellow MHPs, but it's just an easy way. The first question is, how are you feeling today? There's emojis for our little ones who maybe can't read as well, and they can, see what all of the different feelings mean. And then if you scroll down, it has questions about if they need help from their teacher, or if they need some extra help from their counselor or mental health practitioner. And then if they checked yes, it gave them the option to ask about home life, social or friends, or stress, or kind of get more information about what they want to talk about, so you and we have a little bit of a heads up. Again, a lot of MHPs are making virtual platforms. So if you wanted some help with this, I would say, if you don't have time to create one, I would say reach out to your MHPs. We all have access to this one or one very similar to it. And I know that they would be very happy to just link it to you. And it wouldn't take any time at all for them to do that. So just so you kind of have that.
And then one thing that we are not going to get to today, I know we're running short on time, we only got a couple minutes left, but what we have copied into this presentation are 2 different videos, just tips for helping children and students cope during COVID-19, as well as signs your child or student might need therapy or counseling. Those links are in there. So I just wanted to be sure to announce that to you all in case that is something you want to look into. But that wraps it up, and I'm looking in the chat just to see about any question. It doesn't look like I see anything, though.
Yeah, it looks like just a bunch of positive affirmation. You guys did a great presentation today. Again, today is all about mental health. That's what our morning is about, and our afternoon too. So thank you for joining us today, guys. And I've posted a link to your presentation in the chat, and I will post that again in just a moment. So let's take a look at our 10:30 session. That's going to be bullying prevention support with Steve Giddings and Brittany Knipp. 10:30 bullying prevention support with Steve Giddings and Brittany Knipp. Now, you can access the schedule for today and the whole week by going to jcps.me/NTI and clicking on the teacher support for NTI and the virtual training schedule. Once you get here, you can click on any of the hyperlinks to these presentations, and you'll be taken to the presentations, and you can add those to your drive. So just a little FYI there for you. We were joined during that session by some internet trolls in the chat. So one theme that we've kind of had today is digital citizenship. And so there you go, digital citizenship on full display with our internet trolls that made a very brief appearance in our chat. But fortunately, through our moderating, we were able to shut those down. So hello is, who's with us right now? Steve Giddings and Brittany Knipp, right? Is it Knipp?
Yes, that's correct. Good morning.
Good morning. And then who is going to be presenting today?
I am. I'll share my screen.
All right. So Brittany's going to do it. And then Brittany, do you know how to turn closed captioning on?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. All right, and so, yep, you've got it. If you could click that hide button down there too, where it says stop sharing hide, click the hide button. Excellent.
Got it.
And then, yep.
I think I turned them on. Are they on?
I don't. Try one more time. Click on the down arrow. Can you turn them to large or extra large?
Sure.
Perfect. All right, go ahead and.
All right. Is it working now?
No, I'm not seeing. One more time. So.
It's on.
Say the name of your presentation again, real quick.
Bullying prevention support.
No. I wonder if your mic got blocked somehow.
It worked yesterday when we tried this.
All right, one more time. Let's exit out and then try again. So let's go hit the exit button.
Okay.
And then go
All
to
right.
view.
Present.
Yeah, present. And then you're gonna go to closed captions.
Got it.
Are you in Google Chrome by chance, or are you in a different browser?
I should be in Chrome.
Okay. Let's see.
Because it was through Google
Yeah.
that I opened it. It says they're on. It's yellow on my screen.
Yeah, we're not seeing them. Let's go ahead and get started. Maybe they'll pop up in a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Like he said, my name is Brittany Knipp. I'm one of the bullying resource teachers. And I also have with me today Steve Giddings. You want to say hi, Steve?
Hey, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. And we're going to talk today about bullying prevention and some of the support that we've
that we're able to give and some that we've researched over this summer and throughout NTI. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, we are the Bullying Prevention Department. Our supervisor is Miss Crystal Carter. Our resource teachers are Steve Giddings and myself, Brittany Nip. And then we also have a clerk, Miss Janet Young. And our email addresses are there. If you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out to us. And we're happy to get back with you as soon as we can. So our department, a lot of people, when we started these presentations during NTI and over the summer, weren't really sure what our department did. So we always like to review that. And our department's our purpose is to provide educational resources and support JCPS, all stakeholders, concerning everything bullying prevention. We provide resources and supports that are intended to build capacity within the learner, whether that be a student or an adult. We want to increase awareness, reduce bullying behavior, and aid all persons involved in any bullying situations. We also work to increase positive culture and climate within schools and throughout all of JCPS. A lot of times we come into schools and people think that we handle disciplinary actions, but we are not a department that handles disciplinary actions. We might offer suggestions or guide administrators or teachers through that process, but we do not handle the disciplinary action or hand those out. We do offer educational presentations and resources on bullying prevention to students, staff, families, and community stakeholders. We monitor and we distribute tip line reports, and we communicate with the assistant superintendent's offices as needed. We conference with students, staff, and parents as requested in concerning bullying prevention. We even are able to go into classrooms and observe students in an effort to pinpoint possible bullying situations, but also to support you guys as teachers in working through any bullying situations that you feel like might be happening in your classroom. We offer recommendations in an effort to help reduce other bullying to take place, and we are trained as OVEUS bullying prevention program trainers, and we are certified to train nationally to create a sustainable team within a school. So you might see these posters hanging up throughout JCPS and throughout any schools or school buildings. Any office buildings, could be at Anhus, but this is the JCPS definition of bullying, and we have 3 key components. So as I'm reading the definition, kind of think when you hear these 3 key components that are deliberate, repetition or repetitive, and an imbalance of power. So as JCPS defines bullying, bullying is repeated and deliberate physical, verbal, or social attacks or intimidation directed towards another person. There's a real or perceived imbalance of power between the person displaying bullying behavior and the person harmed. Bullying may be done by one individual or a group, and is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. And cyberbullying is bullying that takes place using electronic technology. So really important, those 3 key components, that bullying, it's deliberate, it's repetitive, and there's some type of imbalance of power. Also under that definition, you will see our the bullying hotline phone number, as well as the website where you can put in a tip line report, and Steve will go over that later in our presentation. So we're going to start with signs of possible bullying. And I know as teachers, we can all think back or currently think of a student who I'm getting ready to describe. So I want you to just think for a minute, close your eyes, do whatever makes you think back to a student. And I'm going to describe what a student might be going through if they are getting bullied. So this is the student in your class that's frequently complaining of headaches, always has a stomach ache. They have nervous habits. They're anxious. They're always stuttering, nail biting. Think about that kid. Did you notice this kid have decreased self-esteem? Did their mood or personality change? Maybe they used to be really outgoing and all of a sudden they keep to themselves. Do you have a kid that you can think of who always wants to stay home from school? Or maybe that parent that keeps calling or messaging you saying, I cannot get little Johnny to come to school anymore. He's not wanting to come. Do you think of a kid who avoids all of a sudden social situations or friends? Are they coming to school, or are they at school? Are you noticing unexplained cuts, bruises, scratches? Are their clothes being torn up? Are their backpacks being ripped? And are you noticing a drop in grades? Like I said, I'm sure we can all think of a student who we probably saw these signs, and not always is it bullying, but definitely something we want to check in with these kids on and to be aware of. Now, we've talked about the signs of a student being bullied, but let's think about the student in our class who might be bullying others. I'm going to list some characteristics, and again, close your eyes and I want you to think about the student in your class who might have these characteristics, or you might notice one or two of these, and that could be a sign that you might want to check in with them more closely. So do you have a student, or you could have a student in the upcoming school year who appears to enjoy having power and control? They love dominating others or have friends who do whatever they say. They seem to enjoy conflicts and or fights. So, as we say, they're always in the middle of something, always loving the drama. They may be disrespectful of rules or authority. So they may give you a hard time because they don't feel like the rules apply to them. Do they appear to enjoy seeing others fearful or embarrassed? Do they show little or no empathy or compassion for others? They might blame the person's harmed and saying, well, they deserved it. And they're unable to see things from the other's point of view. And this is really important when you have those one-on-one conversations, when you know there's an issue in your classroom, and this student is just adamant that they did nothing wrong. They have no empathy, and they cannot understand why you're even having to pull them out into the hallway and have a conversation with them. I know back when I was a teacher at Kenwood or working with kids at Simple Elementary, I had this student a lot. So being aware is definitely going to help you be proactive in dealing with these students. And not only does bullying have effects on your classroom climate, but it can affect your whole school climate. So it could create a climate of fear and disrespect. It could interfere with learning because a lot of times when we're having these bullying incidents, it disrupts the day. And I know you can think of times when you've had a behavior issue or any type of issue that interrupts learning. It's hard to get your kiddos back and focused. Your students may feel insecure and they not like school as well. They might not want to come anymore. And most importantly, students may perceive a lack of control and caring from adults. And I feel like this is important because I can remember as a classroom teacher, I wanted my parents and students to know that I had control over my classroom. So a lot of times when you have even one or two issues in your class, parents may perceive that you don't have control of your classroom, and that may not be true at all. So just really building those relationships with kids is so important. That way you can pinpoint and be proactive if you see an issue starting to happen. So most importantly, we have focused a lot this summer, and if you've been on any of our other PDs on cyberbullying, just because of our students being home, we've been doing NTI since March, and we're going to continue that. And I think it's important for us to realize how much technology they have at their fingertips, whether it be a Chromebook or their cell phones or their parents' cell phones. So we're going to take a little bit and kind of focus on cyberbullying and some of the platforms that we've noticed kids are using. So cyberbullying is defined as willful and repeated harm that's inflicted through the use of computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices. I'm sorry, I went too fast. And in our research, we found that about 37% of young people between the ages of 12 and 17 have been bullied online at some time. And about half of our LGBTQ students experience online harassment. 60% of young people have seen this happen online, and most will not intervene. And only 1 out of 10 people bullied online will tell a parent or an adult. Again, they are afraid to be in trouble, or a lot of times they just don't want to be involved. So again, going back to when I was saying we're going to touch on some of the cyberbullying platforms, these are the most common platforms throughout our research that we found. So we have Instagram, TikTok, Ask FM, Chat Roulette, and Sarah Awe. And we're going to touch on each one of these, and we have some examples as well. So starting off with Instagram, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Instagram, or if you have kids or kids in your classroom talk about it. Instagram, basically you can post a picture, you can post a video, and then anyone can comment on that. So as you see in this example, someone says, babe, you need eyebrows. She looks like the Grudge. Oh my gosh, you look so creepy. So a lot of inappropriate and nasty comments can go on here and really mess with kids' self-esteem. So that's something to be aware of. All right, and then TikTok. This one has been up and coming, I feel like, and has really potential negative effects for students. As you can see at the bottom, the examples, kids and I guess adults can also post music videos. They can put pre-recorded audio on there, and it can cause addiction to students because they see other students and they suffer from what we call FOMO, the fear of missing out. And so they're constantly checking their TikTok, spending hours online. It also brings about bullying, and principals from all over the country have reported students being bullied on this app. It makes students and kids compare to each other. Some students, they make challenges, they make outrageous and dangerous videos just to get people to like their videos and gain more followers. And then lastly, safety concerns. There's no restrictions as to who can join the app, so it's not just kids or students from Jefferson County on the app. It can be people from all over the United States and outside of the country. And then your kids are talking to people all over the world. So these are just a few things to be aware of on these platforms. And Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about Ask FM.
All right, thanks, Brittany. So again, with these platforms, a lot of them are anonymous. So just like right before we got on here, they were talking about the trolls this morning on this site. There are trolls on every site that you go onto. It's overwhelming sometimes because they pretty much have no filters. And so these sites they're asking for that. And so when you get maybe a young person or a teenager who already has these self-esteem issues and body image issues, you can only imagine what some of these comments will do to them. We're talking about health and mental health, and this plays very well into that. So continue with Ask FM. This one, like I said, is anonymous, and you can see this an example here, telling the person to go kill themselves. Do us a favor and kill yourself, make sure you succeed this time, go die. Again, put yourself in that situation of being that young person who already has issues. We all had issues as teenagers with, image and all that. So, these, it can be damaging to a person's mental health. All right, moving on. Chat roulette. This is one that really scares me because you have your webcam and it just randomly puts you up with someone else who has a webcam. Again, so picture an adult this time who's up to no good going on this site trying to find impressionable young people who are willing to do whatever. In this case here, we have a young person, the little boy on the bottom, who says, "I just killed my parents in their sleep." And then the ones on top are asking questions. How did you do it? And then so they go on in this whole conversation. And I put myself in the place of the people on top here. What would you do in that situation? Would you call the police? Do you think this child is lying or just playing a joke? You don't know. So this could be really dangerous. Again, you have adults on here who sometimes are up to no good. You've got the video camera right there in front of a child who is willing to sometimes do inappropriate things. So again, very scary chat roulette there. Moving on. And then Sarah, this is another anonymous one, but the app, it kind of tells you that this is only people you know. So we have a message here that's anonymous to Kimmy. It says, "Would you like to meet up? Because we haven't seen each other in a while. How about 2:30 at the park near your house?" So Kimmy could think this is anybody, maybe a cousin, a friend, whoever, that she hasn't seen in a while. And imagine if she goes to the park at 2:30 to meet this person. And again, imaginations can run wild on these. But we need to make sure we're using these apps appropriately and making sure our own children and our students are also using these appropriately. And while I'm speaking of these, we're going to move on here in a second, but like Brittany said, over the summer, we did numerous presentations that go further in detail with cyberbullying and several more apps. And there's also some apps that can be used that monitor your children or your students' activity online. And if you're interested in those apps, please reach out to us and we can send you links to those. We can send you links to our presentations because it's all in there. There's apps for parents, there's apps for children, and some of them can be very helpful. So please let us know if you're interested in those.
Stephen, somebody had a question about Sarah. Does it show the name of the messenger or is it anonymous?
It's anonymous.
Okay.
All right, moving on. So we talk about when students are being bullied or harmed. We're also going to talk about in a second the students doing the harm. But first, when we are in our classroom, we want to make sure that our students are feeling safe. That's always, I know when I was a classroom teacher, that was my number one priority, is making sure my students were safe, physically, mentally, whatever. And so this goes a long way to help ensure that. So if a student comes up to you and tells you that something's going on, we're going to use what we call the 4 A's. And we're going to go over these quickly. And we'll spend more time on these and other presentations, or again, if you want more information, please feel free to reach out to us. So we're going to affirm the students' feelings. We're going to let them know it's okay to feel mad. It's okay to feel embarrassed or upset. These are natural feelings. We all have these feelings when these things happen to us. So let them know it's okay. Then we're going to ask a question. Get details, what happened? Because obviously things are different to each person. So what happened in the situation? Who did this? What did they say? What did they do? How did you feel? Where did this happen? Get all the details. And then we want to assess the student's safety and act accordingly. So first of all, we want to make sure that their immediate needs are met and they're safe. They're not being hurt or they're not actually in pain or anything like that at that point. And then we want to make sure that we do what we can to keep them safe. So when we do that, we want to come up with an action plan. Now, this doesn't have to be some long drawn out event. It could be something very quick, very simple. But you want to make sure you create this with the student input. Ask them, what would you like to see happen? What would you need to see happen to make you feel comfortable or safe? And just create something simple. One of the things that our department does, we make sure that there's follow-up. So if you make up one of these plans, make sure you follow up with that student to make sure the plan's working. In our department, if we come in and work with students on action plans, we'll come back weekly, bi-weekly, whatever we decide upon, and just check in and make sure that that plan is working. So moving on to the person who's actually doing the harm, because they have mental health needs as well. We want to identify the problem, diffuse the reporting responsibility. We're going to let them know that we have to report this. So you're going to be straight with them. You're going to tell them, I heard you say this, I saw you do this, and I'm required to report it. Let them know up front. You're going to apply appropriate or logical consequences. You're going to generate future solutions with the student. So when this happens again, what are you going to do? How are you going to feel? If this person looks at you funny in the hallway, how are you going to react? Making sure that they understand that this is probably going to happen again, and giving them an avenue to think, what can I do that's more appropriate next time? We're going to try to help that student build empathy. And we do that by obviously putting ourselves in that person's situation. How would you feel if? And then make it personal to them. How would you feel if someone did this to your brother or sister? Or how would you feel if someone called your mother this name or your grandmother this name? Help them build that empathy. And then, same as the last plan, you're going to follow up to see if this plan is working. Don't assume just because you're not hearing anything from the person who's been harmed or the person doing the harm that everything's fine. Check in with both students, make sure that both their needs are being met. So, like Brittany said earlier, we have a tip line, and we get a lot of calls in our office, a lot of calls from APs saying, can you come help me talk to a student? Sometimes when we come in, students feel maybe sometimes more comfortable because they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble by the principal or the assistant principal. So when parents call us, we make sure that we have them communicate their concerns to the classroom teacher. Because a lot of times you get an upset parent, they're going to go straight to the principal, or sometimes they'll just call us directly. So we want to direct them back to the classroom teacher. Make sure that they communicate their concern with the school administrator. Sometimes if there's a need for a meeting, request a face-to-face meeting with the school, discuss the concerns or events or allegations. And if our department's needed to come in and kind of be a mediator for that meeting, we are more than welcome to do that as well. And then we ask them to submit a tip line report, either online or on the phone. Both reports are the same exact. If you do it on the phone, you talk to a live person and they'll ask you a set of questions, specifics of like what happened, who was involved, that sort of thing. And then if you do this online, you can go on at your own convenience and they'll ask you the same questions. You just fill it out, put all the information you can. This report's then submitted to our office, and we'll submit it to the superintendent's office, assistant superintendent's office, and we'll also send it to the school because they're ultimately still responsible for this report. They'll get 5 business days to address it and hopefully create a plan to help that situation. And the report is still investigated at the school level. That's when, if the school needs assistance or resources, we can support. A lot of times we'll get calls from principals or assistant principals asking if we can come in and maybe speak to some of the students that were involved. maybe sit in a classroom, just see if these things are really happening and that sort of thing. We speak with school and staff and families to get concerns addressed and handled. So like I said, sometimes we're mediators, because a lot of times parents, they go from 0 to 100 with their anger issues when their children are being, and they think their children are being hurt at school, which is understandable. All right, Brittany. All right, finishing up here. So here is our bullying tip line number. It's 888-393-6780. And like the bullying poster you saw earlier, these are also hopefully in a lot of schools, and especially in the counselors and principals' offices. If you don't have these and you would like to have them, we have copies. We also have electronic versions we can send you if you're interested. Please call us if you want these. We can pony them to you. We can drop them off at your school or send it to you electronically. Again, jcps.me/bully. That's our website. And once you click on there, it'll take you to the bullying tip line, which is our next page. And you'll see the red B at the top. This is like a little red B stop sign, or the blue one at the bottom that says report bullying. Once you hit that, it'll take you to our tip line, just the next page. And you'll see bullying and harassment is circled there. That's the ones that our department handles. There's so many other, there's other departments that are involved with the tip line, but we only handle the bullying and harassment. So you'll click on begin a new report. Once you do that, you'll receive a case number. Make sure you write that case number down, because if you need to get back in to edit, you'll need that number to get back in. If you don't have it, you won't be able to get back in. I know I kind of finished that one up quickly. Like I said, if you have any questions, concerns, if you need resources, we are willing to come in. We will come in and talk to students, even in your virtual classrooms if you have issues. We prefer maybe if another adult would be there, but we can still speak with students if you need. All right. Anybody have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you so much for that, Stephen. Great session there. Stephen Durham in the chat said, we really do need to teach empathy. And if you did not see Michelle Obama's speech last night, where she talked about empathy, man, she nailed it. So empathy is 100%. Really important.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so into our 11 o'clock hour, we are going to do Building Relationships Virtually with MTSS Behavior, Shannon Neighbor and Ronzel Smith.
Hello.
Are you guys there? Awesome. Hello.
Yes, we are here.
Hey, Shannon, are you going to be sharing your screen?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. All right, if you want to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
While we're waiting on that, I just want to remind you guys, if you want to subscribe to our channel, you can get live updates for when we go live, and also every time we upload any on-demand episode. So subscribe to our channel.
Is it coming up?
Not seeing it yet. So if you share your screen, and then you're going to want to share your slides. Let's see.
So I go to
your three dots.
Yeah, I'm on that.
And then
share screen.
Share screen.
Mhm. And then I have it pulled up over here to the right, but I don't see the tab on my end.
So
I'm in present mode in my slide.
And you're on the Google Hangout, and you're hitting share screen.
Yeah, and normally it'll come up here where I can like share a tab, or share.
You have multiple tabs open up top.
No, I just have one.
No, yeah, you want a Hangouts video call, and you want your presentation up on the other tab.
Yeah, it is.
Right
Is
now,
it sharing now?
no, we're just seeing you still. Magic of technology. Okay.
Hold on, let me go back out of it. I don't know why it's not. Ronzel, do you have yours pulled up? We can't hear you.
Let me try to pull mine up.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
I don't know why it's not working on my end.
Oh, you know what? It just worked, Shannon.
Is it?
Yep,
Oh,
now we
oh,
see
okay.
it. Perfect.
Yeah, there was, okay.
All right, present, and then you're going to go to your closed captioning down at the bottom, hit the down arrow,
Okay.
and then could you make the text size large or extra large?
Okay.
Right next to, okay.
Is that good?
Just the down arrow, and then go to text size large or extra large.
Large.
Okay, perfect. You're good to go.
Okay. All right, sorry for that.
No problem.
All right, Ronzel, you up?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to say welcome, everyone, to Building Relationships in the Virtual Classroom. My name is Ronzel Smith. I'm one of your presenters, and my coworker and colleague is Shannon Neighbor. We're from the MTSS Behavior under the Culture and Climate. So let's dive into it. Our next slide is the components of MTSS. And let me just share my screen. As you can tell, quarantine has been real good to me right now. I was 150 pounds when it started, and now I'm a little bit heavier. One of the components under the MTSS, we really, all our decision making is driven by data. We focus on an overall school improvement that is sustainable. And what we mean by sustainable, no matter who leaves and come to your school, we want to make sure those systems are sustainable and effective. And the way we value effectiveness is through data. Everything we do aligns with the resources and it supports for students and for teachers and staff who drive the instruction. Other components are, our MTSS.
Sorry, Ronzel.
Oh, you're fine.
Go to that one.
Our MTSS department is aligned into three branches, basically. We have the academic, we have the engagement, and the behavior. The academic focus on the curriculum and design and learning intervention. The engagement really focuses on those high-yield pedagogy to engage students. In the MTSS behavior, we really focus on PBIS, restorative practice, and building those sustainable systems within your school to improve the climate and culture, just not in your school, but in our overall district. Our Culture and Climate division is led by Dr. Katie DeFiore. She's the assistant superintendent over climate and culture. The MTSS work is our department leader, Dr. Naomi Brahim, and our supervisor is Sandra Hensel. We are broken up into 5 zones. So no matter what zone you are in, you have a resource teacher from engagement and the behavior side assigned to you. And if you don't know who that person is, just reach out to our department. Our emails will be at the end of this presentation, and feel free to email us with any questions that you might have. Today, our learning intentions, we will discuss ways to build meaningful relationships with your students during the first week of school, and how to maintain those positive relationships throughout the school year virtually, and really focus on building those relationships during this NTI as we move to more in person. Some of the strategies to build your classroom community and to help build your relationships are circles. Present a question all students can answer in those small group interactions. Meet the teacher through video introduction or Google Slide. Literature and stories. This allows opportunities for discussion around real world events. If it's any other time in history, this is a great time to discuss what's really going on in the world, but through a strategy and a relationship building way, because our students are living this reality. Personalized feedback. Students will love this individual attention. And let's not forget, in the digital world now, we can build those virtual field trips, since we can't really go on field trips right now, due to COVID-19. Building relationships. Virtual circles. There can be no vulnerability without risk. There can be no community without vulnerability. There can be no peace and ultimately no life without community. So let's think of the very first circle that we ever saw back in the day virtually. My son and I was looking at an old rerun of the Brady Bunch. Now, doesn't that remind you of a Google Meet or a virtual circle? The intro to the Brady Bunch. It just reminds me of a Zoom call. But virtual circles can really help build the relationships and just to foster those relationships as we move into this NTI period. Why should we even do circles? Circles help us build relationships, give people an equal voice, and it promotes emotional well-being. It empowers change and growth, and it increases the responsibility, and it creates a safe space. Think about whatever we do, from sports to our place of worship, or just hanging out at your local bar or restaurant. Naturally, as humans, we actually form a circle because we want everyone to have an equal say and an equal voice to express themselves. So when you're creating these circles, say in Google Meet, you want to set norms. And this is setting the expectations around how long the answer should be. And why is this? Because one of those norms that you can set, when you're not talking, mute your microphone. We don't talk when other people are talking because we can't hear. And the purpose, we have to establish a purpose, state the purpose of the circle, because as the instructor, as the teacher, as the leader of the circle, we want to set a certain tone that students understand the expectation, so we don't get too sidetracked with other things. And questions might come up. Questions come up so everyone can answer. We want to establish questions that everyone can answer, so you just don't have people that might not want to talk, but we want to set safe questions. And don't worry, we have a solution for you. Shannon, can you click on the virtual circle topic? One of the things that our department did to help establish just some questions, we kind of outlined the first 6 weeks of questions so that it can help just guiding questions. For the third week, a storytelling from our lives. Second week, check-in circles. Now, depending on your grade level and the maturity of your students, and you might just want to change a little bit of the wording to fit those students. But when we went to design the questions, these questions can be asked from K through 12. For example, 9th graders love telling stories. Kindergartners, love telling stories. So you might just have to change a little wording, but these questions are a great guideline to help you get started. Now let's take a look at one of the videos. And one of the things that we want you to do is that I have my screen split, but we have someone monitoring the chat. I'm going to pose a question to you guys in the virtual world. What strategies, circle strategies, did you use last school year? And what did you pull out the video that we're about to watch?
Hey guys, we cannot hear that video. Did you want me to try to play it through my screen?
You can if you want. It's okay.
Okay.
It's just a short little video, so they'll have the link to it, and they can, watch it.
Yeah, and I've posted the link to your presentation multiple times in the chat, so it is there.
Okay, thank
you. We appreciate it. On the next one, you want to really do check in with your students every day. And one of the things that you can do within a circle is just have a temperature check. And what a temperature check is, you can go around and say, what type of day are you having? Maybe you'll have a student say, my day is a sunny day. Or you might have a student that states, I'm having a thunderstorm type of day. So you really know how to engage those students and really know what type of questions to pose just to kind of build that relationship. Because let's not forget, our students have been home since March, and I can only tell a personal story right now on my own son. I took him to pick up, he's entering the 6th grade, a registration and everything, and he was very nervous on starting 6th grade virtually, because his biggest fear was, well, I might not make any friends over the computer. So this would be a great time to build those relationships, to get kids to learn each other, to know each other, and to build mutual respect for each other.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because my part of the presentation, I will go into and give examples of how you can build relationships with your students, but also, within the classroom with each other to build those relationships. So thank you. And this quote, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And like Ronzel, with those circles and checking in every day, that'll really let the students know that you care about them and how they're feeling. Okay, so I'm going to go into how to build communities within the classroom, because that is very important. Under normal circumstances, you would have a back to school night where you would meet your students. They'd come in, the elementary kids would be so excited to drop off their school supplies. Maybe not the high school or middle school kids, but you aren't going to be able to do that this year. But you can still, there are several ways that you can introduce yourself to students. You can, here's an example, I'm not going to play it because the video is not working, but you could do a virtual meet the teacher through Google Slides, and there's slides on here like your favorite books, what you did over, the summer. There's even a section on here how you can introduce your class. So like meet your classmates, and there's some ideas. So I would definitely check that out. And there's ways that the students can also introduce themselves to their classmates. Giving personalized feedback is also a way to give your students, right now they might feel a little isolated, so it'll give clear communication between you and your students. It'll also encourage them and motivating and motivate them to be active participants in their work, and also maybe during the Google Meet sessions, they won't feel isolated. Like we were talking about those small group interactions. Normally, the first couple of weeks of school, you would build relationships in small groups. So you would watch how your students work together, listen for if they're meeting your expectations, working in groups. And that really builds community in the classroom. So you're not going to be able to do that this year, but you can do it virtually. I know that on the Learning Channel last week, there were some great breakout room sessions through Google Meet, ideas on how to do that and set it up. And this is a quick video too that you could watch on how to set up breakout rooms. But this will create a safe learning space. And that's very important that we give students that feeling that they are safe. They want to connect and interact with their peers. And Google breakout rooms, Google Meet breakout rooms, that's an excellent way to do that. It'll also give you an opportunity to just kind of listen into the student discussions. You can do small group interactions, and later in the presentation, I will give some ideas of games that will also help build community. Storytelling and podcasts. JCPS has podcasts for kids right here and Audible, and those are all free subscriptions that kids can, log on to. You can also, in the teacher backpack, I know the Equity Committee has excellent resources. We have to share stories to build community, especially with what is going on in our community today. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to allow, in some cases, these sensitive, emotional topics to be discussed. And pulling in literature is a great way to start these conversations, and just pulling in resources for topics that you can discuss. We have here Class Dojo for remote learning. Again, here's a little quick video. You maybe had used Class Dojo for communication with parents during when you were in brick and mortar, but now they have a virtual learning platform that is excellent. You can post, stories to your students. Your students can post stories. You can send out messages to families. You can tell, class stories virtually. So that is an excellent resource to check out the remote learning platform. Like I had said before, playing games, it's a great icebreaker, and it just kind of makes everybody feel a little more relaxed and safe. Here's an example of, it's called the change game, where you pick a person to be the leader. Everybody focuses on the leader for 5 seconds. They walk off and change 3 things about themselves. Of course, you'll have to set the expectations for your students like you always do. But that's just kind of a fun game. It's lighthearted. They come back and everybody has to guess what they changed. Another great game is the scavenger hunt, where you can use an online spinner, and you can do several things with this. You could have them pick something in their household that starts with that letter and come back and share it. But you do have to let them know that it's okay if they can't find something. This is also a great activity to play with the staff. It doesn't just have to be with students. We know that our students love field trips. They are not going to be able to do that right now virtually, but virtually they can. We can't go somewhere, but there are excellent resources here on virtual field trips that you can do with your class. You could maybe set a goal where if they get so many points or whatever your reward system is virtually, that on Friday they get to do a virtual field trip. And these resources go into detail. They have pre-activities to do before the field trip, and then you take the field trip and activities to do after. That will just give something for the students to look forward to, something they can work towards. And it will support all learners. And I also put in here just a little lunch with the teacher. That's something quick that you can do to build relationships. Maybe you pick 3 students, each week to invite them to eat lunch with you. That's something fun that they would look forward to spend that time with you.
Hey, Sharon.
Yes.
I think one of the other things that as they're building relationships, they can also invite other family members to be part of their virtual learning, and take their family members to help be engaged, like on the virtual field trips and with the lunch of the teachers.
That's a great idea. And then that way they can also meet the parents and take in the family with them. Maybe they discover places that they've never, that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to visit. It's a good idea. So here's Kahoot. They have a distance learning Kahoot, so games that you can play, academic games with your students. That'll keep them engaged. Here we have linked all the resources that we have in the presentation, articles. And please reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want more resources. We are here to help you in any way that we can. Anybody in the zone, we have that in the beginning of the slide in the introduction. Anybody, you can reach out and we will help you. So that is all we have today. Is there anything in the chat that we need to
just a bunch of positive affirmation. Justin Elliott says these relationships are the beginning of deeper learning, and you cannot skip these steps of relating to kids and expect them to stick with you through project-based learning. So just reiterating the power of relationship building.
Right, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us today. I just posted a link to your presentation in the chat, and we have that.
Okay.
And so we have one more show. I'm going to refresh my browser here. For some reason, it's not showing up. We have one more show today at 11:30. ARE tool, before and after secondary, with Rachel Klein and Avon Cook. And so this is our schedule. This was our schedule this morning. And if you access this schedule through the jcbs.me/NTI site, you can click on any of the links, the blue hyperlinks here, and get access to those presentations. These videos will also be broken up and put onto our channel within 24 hours, and you'll have on-demand access as well. And if you subscribe to our channel, you will be notified when we do upload these on demand. So that's a reason to subscribe. We will take a lunch at 12 o'clock, and we'll be back at 12:30 with facilitating virtual circles. And then we have a full day through, looks like 4 o'clock. So today is all about mental health. It's been a great morning talking about mental health, and it's a really important topic during this pandemic. And particularly going to school and with our kids and ourselves, talking about mental health and kind of how we get through this. So thank you to everybody that's presented this morning. And we have Rachel Klein joining us today, and Avon's going to join us as well, right, Rachel?
Yeah, she should be here soon. So assuming that we're set to start here at 11:30, I'm just going to give her a minute to join the room.
Perfect.
Yeah, so
excellent.
I can at least, I don't know if you're ready for me to share screen or if we just want to wait till she arrives.
We can wait a couple minutes. Actually, that gives me a chance to go to our Twitter account and look at what we got going on under that JCPS dig in hashtag. So let's take a look here for the latest under our JCPS dig in hashtag. And so, man, Kyle Chandler, again, he's just on it. With tweeting out our channel episodes today. Kyle, shout out, man. You're doing great. Kyle. Rebecca Reynolds to the yes card to Jessica Cullen of Eisenhower Elementary. So she was on our channel yesterday, and Jessica told us all about what she's doing during NTI 2.0 with her students and how she kind of builds that community in her first grade classroom. So Jessica, I just want to say how awesome you are starting out NTI 2.0, sharing what you're doing in your classroom. Eisenhower is so lucky to have you. JCPS is so lucky to have you, Jessica. If you didn't see it yesterday, Jessica Cullen and Brian Morrison were on our channel, two amazing teachers and digital leaders for our district. And they shared some great stuff, and you can find those on demand on our channel. And so we have that. Whoops, I didn't mean to get out of that. Sorry, guys. Let's go back here. lots of different stuff happening with our JCPS Dig In hashtag. Anytime you do anything innovative with technology, use that hashtag JCPS Dig In. Allison Heinrich, she actually joined a Google My Map that we had a presentation going on earlier from Dr. Laura Donnelly. Just a kind of a live jump in there. Allison Heinrich is kind of an MVP in our chat. She's always joining us and a willing participant. So thank you, Allison, for being that in our Google My Maps activity this morning. More stuff from Kyle Chandler and the channel, and then my partner Steve Durham again tweeting out about the channel. And there's Brian Morrison. We talked about how he had that great episode yesterday, and he made another video. So if you're on Twitter, follow @Morrison's Class. You will not regret it. And he's posted all kinds of like really cool green screen stuff he's done with his intro and his Meet the Teacher type stuff. So here he's just telling his kids like how to get to classwork in his Google Classroom. So it's just him in front of his own Google Classroom. So really, really good job from Brian there. He is a model for digital innovation. You know, he's actually coming from Watson Lane Elementary to Medora Elementary. So right there, he just moved right down Dixie Highway is what he did. So pretty neat. And so it's about 11:30. Rachel is there still. Avon is getting there. He's going to be here in just a second. Speaking of Dixie Highway, Avon taught at Butler High School, which I graduated from Butler High School, so it's always good to have Butler people on this show. So shout out to class of 2000 at Butler High School. And so Rachel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have confirmed with Avon she is on her way. There is never a dull moment in our lives as people who support schools. So we are being pulled in a lot of different directions, which of course makes us extremely happy. Just sometimes you don't know left from right and up from down.
Right.
So anyway, I am here with my colleague Avon Cook, who's joining us momentarily, and we are both resource teachers for the Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Division. And we thought today that we would give you an opportunity to see what it's like to actually work with the ARE tool, the R tool, and that stands for Affirming Racial Equity. And you know, this is nothing shocking to say, but we're long overdue for this type of content and this type of thinking, because we have students out there who are in desperate need of lessons that are more reflective of who they are, and opportunities to see themselves reflected in the learning. So I want to know if you can see my screen here in a moment. I will share. Oh, do I have the ability to share the screen?
You do. You just go up to your three dots, your snowman, and then click share screen.
There they are. I thought that was the meatballs. That's what I call those, but that's okay. We can certainly look at them from more than one point of view. So I see lots of folks in the chat. I'm trying to keep up, and it seems like we do have a mix. I am not trying to dissuade anybody from being here today, but Avon and I designed our content to be definitely secondary specific, regarding middle school and English language, middle school and high school English language arts. But we are certainly able to point you in the direction of our elementary school colleagues who can certainly comment on this type of learning as well. So
excellent. So Rachel, can I stop you for a second? Can you turn on your closed captioning? So you're going to go to, can you click on your hide, where it says hide down there, and then go to your CC captions?
Oh, I only have that little X dropping down.
Scroll down. There you go. See the CC?
Oh, my bad. Yes,
and then
I do.
The down arrow.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Click on the, hit allow.
Got it.
Perfect. And then your down arrow.
Kentucky.
And then could you make your text size large or extra large?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, look at that.
Perfect.
I like that. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Good deal. And I am taking a last minute peek at my phone here. All right, wonderful. So, we are we good to go? We good to roll?
I think we are.
Oh, there's my friend Avon. Okay. Avon, I took an opportunity to orient ourselves just a bit in terms of what our role and just the impetus for this type of work, and that we're just long overdue for it. But alas, we are. And even though we do have some elementary folks in the crowd, I don't want them to go away. This type of learning can absolutely be applied to elementary audience members, and we will happily point you in the direction of our elementary colleagues. So, are you ready to roll? Oops.
Good to go. Good to go.
All right. This is us. And you obviously have our JCPS emails. We love to tweet when appropriate. We love to share resources, ideas, point people in the direction of some really divergent thinkers and some people who like to share their wisdom when it comes to racial equity, cultural responsiveness. So anyway, in our short time, we are going to just brief you on the ARE tool. Ava, I'm going to let you take it away.
So for those of you who don't have contact with the ARE tool yet, it is something that you can find in the teacher backpack, and it is a means for teachers to purposefully approach anti-biased and anti-racist practices and ways of thinking divergently about your content and the curriculum that you're putting in front of students. So it has 6 overall components, which are bulleted there off to the side. We really like to think about them in terms of pedagogy and practice. So if you look, content integration and knowledge construction really wrap into what and how you're teaching, whereas prejudice elimination and the remainder kind of wrap into the practices. So those interpersonal pieces of how you relate to kids, what your classroom culture feels like, and how you're building up students to be actively anti-biased and anti-racist.
Right, well said, thank you. So this tool can be used in a multitude of ways, but ultimately we're looking to put this into the hands of academic instructional coaches as supports, and into the hands of PLC members as a planning tool, a guide, a resource for how we start to build in more culturally responsive practices, how we begin to reframe our planning process to be more racially equitable. So while the ARE tool has multiple components and underneath each component multiple indicators, it's important to know that not every lesson or unit will hit every single indicator under every single section. But if we are starting to use this tool alongside the PLC process, you'll begin to become more comfortable with it, and eventually more and more of those descriptors can be embedded. So again, it can be used to create lessons, but also in the creation of units. We expect that this is not something that is just used by 1 or 2 content areas, but that all content areas are learning ways to embrace it. We recognize that does require some additional support, which we are certainly here for. But in the time that we do have with you, Avon and I would love to show you what it looks like to take resources that are already in our pocket and to look at them for their worth, but then to also look at them as a means of extending a lesson, of diving deeper, of finding more and more ways to take, for example, a resource from Common Lit, which we're going to be looking at, which has really well-written questions and it's really well structured and there's lots of teacher guides, but we want to show you how to take that even further. So what we did, I'm having issues with my controls here. We took a unit from the already existing JCPS 8th grade English Language Arts curriculum documents. And there was a suggestion to use King's I Have a Dream speech as a text for exploration. Perfect, wonderful, great, but we really do need to go much further than that. So we then found a suggested resource that accompanies that, which is found on Common Lit, and it provides the exact transcript of the text, and it has lots of questions that guide you, but also questions that are meant for assessment or for discussing with students. When we make these links live, you'll be able to click on all of those. So what you will see on the left side of the page is what is provided by Common Lit, and what you will see is how Avon and I worked it through each part of the ARE tool. So Avon, why don't you start us off with content integration?
So within content integration for the R tool, what it's really having you think about critically is the diversity of cultural viewpoints that you're utilizing in a lesson. And it's also going to leverage the idea of windows and mirrors within a lesson. So one of the things that we consider when we're teaching a text like this is how these individuals were understood culturally and historically. So today we know that we are very frequently quoting individuals like MLK, but during his time, he was one of the most hated men in America. So having that dialogue with students and exploring the duality and the relationship between figures like MLK and Malcolm X, but also providing context for not just the American civil rights movement, but global discussions of civil rights resistance and civil rights issues that have spanned almost every continent, every country. So thinking about this very holistically so that we are bringing in those underrepresented cultures and viewpoints.
All right, thank you, Avon. So when we are trying to integrate different documents and resources, the more and more you can look at them through this critical lens, the more and more you'll realize that there are loads of ways to incorporate responsiveness, but you do need to be intentional. So looking at the next one, knowledge construction is the second portion of the ARE tool. So from Common Lit, there is this open-ended question which requires students to go back to the text and be analytical, to pull out evidence to support their claim or their response to the question. And so taking something that is already content aligned and allowing students to build their knowledge around it, to take those questions to spur inquiry, to take the questions provided and to allow students to dig even deeper. You can see the after version allows students to go beyond the assignment and start to ask, well, okay, how has America actually changed? Can we facilitate robust dialogue around this with our students? What kind of proof exists that people of color have gained equity? What are still some enormous factors that are keeping a thumb on a lot of people? Students can then continue to dig further and recognize that there is a chain of events, quite often quite deliberate, that lead us to exactly where we are today in society. So taking something already well written and transforming it into something that is relevant to a student, that allows them to explore themselves, is just yet another shift that we can employ as we look at how we revamp our lesson planning process. All right, Avon, prejudice elimination.
So this is where we start shifting out of pedagogy and more purposely into practice. This is really going to force you as a section of the R tool to think about the ways you are building understanding among groups that are dissimilar. So if you have a very mixed classroom, it's really circling back to, are you upholding ideas that are biased or stereotypical? And if your content is, how are you negotiating that through that knowledge construction piece to not just equip students with the skills, but actually giving them the space to have those really immersive dialogues about these things. So when you're thinking through a question like this, understanding that when we're talking about prejudice, having that conversation of how those things form, how it's related to things like bias and racism, institutionalized racism and systemic racism versus what a student may understand at a very entry level. And then also thinking about how we situate ourselves in terms of our identities and how we're validating the reality that we are not just one thing. So yes, we are going to talk about and push on the idea of race, but the experience of a Black male is completely different than the experience of a Black male who is also part of the LGBTQ community, or a Black male who is also Muslim. So understanding how these underrepresented groups have to navigate life, and how those conversations can be brought into your classroom so that students can engage with them critically in that safe environment to have those difficult discussions is going to be very important with even something that is already a pretty strong piece of content, like what you're seeing here from Common Lit.
All right, thank you very much. I continue to go back to the stream of comments to make sure that we're not missing anything, but I will turn to our moderator to make sure that we haven't, if there's something that we need to address to stop us now.
No, just affirmation, guys. No questions.
All right. Then let's move on to equitable pedagogy. So from Common Lit, the question asks, in the context of the text, how do people create change? Cite evidence from this text, your own experience, and other literature, art, or history in your answer. I do like this question because it folds in the student's own experience and validates that that's acceptable to incorporate in a student response. I do like that there are some cross-curricular opportunities for students to really demonstrate their personal understanding of the world and the ways that different content areas intersect with each other. But when we really do stop to ask this question and try to expand it to lots of different ways of thinking, then this is where we begin to fold in the very real world that students are experiencing, and that they're experiencing from a multitude of viewpoints, cultural viewpoints, and linguistic and religious and race and all of the things that make up a person's identity. To be able to fold that in, it gives us an opportunity to learn who our students are, where they are, and what they need from us in real time. And so to think of the way that we address our students and really start saying, how can I pull in their lives to almost be the curriculum? And when we do that, that's when we start allowing our students to inform us, again, of who they are, what they desire from us, how they want their needs to be met. And then we flip the question back on the students, and when they feel that the learning is relevant to them, that's when they begin to apply the learning to themselves and start to see themselves in this case as an agent of change. What do they see in their own city? What happens? What are the risks with being people who call for change? And so it's not just analyzing a text anymore, which is highly important, but we're taking that skill and turning it into critical thinking. Even, I don't know if you have more to say on this one before we move forward.
Nope, great job.
Okay, then let us move along. We want to talk next about empowering classroom culture.
So this piece really situates itself within the equitable pedagogies that Rachel just talked you through. So where the earlier sections of the RTOL are pushing on what you teach and how you teach it, as I said before, these latter sections are really getting into how we are building up our students as scholars and how we're really getting them to engage dynamically and with intention with a lot of the things that we're putting in front of them. So as you are going through the RTOL, if you are not already familiar with it, a lot of it positions things that are best practice. Teamwork, critical communication skills, whether it's written or oral, inquiry, all of those things. And a lot of that hinges on establishing an empowering classroom culture. So when we're talking about a text like this, it kind of questions you as a teacher to think about the environment that you're introducing this text to. So what are some ways that you have intentionally made your classroom equitable or inclusive? How have you communicated your allyship to your students? How do you expect students to honor individuals who are different from them? And how have you communicated why that's such an important thing for us to do, especially during times like this? circling all the way back to content integration and the idea of windows and mirrors, giving students a chance to see themselves positively in the content, but then also seeing people who are different from them in the content. If that isn't happening regularly, utilizing a piece like this one from Common Lit may still fall flat for you. So a lot of this negotiation is how we expect students to act, and how we react when they deviate from that. So this piece really hinges on expectations that are leveled against students, but also what are their expectations of us, and how can we co-construct a more equitable and more inclusive classroom environment where you are able to have these difficult conversations around race, orientation, gender, nationality, all of these manner of things that we know it's important for our young scholars to be able to engage in critically.
And I think it's really important to add on at this point. We know that there are conversations going on in every single school building prior to the opening of the school year where entire staffs are going through conversations about how to talk about race, why we talk about race, why we discuss oppression and injustice. And a lot of staffs are beginning to have these extremely vulnerable conversations, equipping yourself to know what to say, how to react, how to handle situations that can and should be coming up in your classroom conversations. It's okay to not have all the tools for responding, but it's not okay to wait for them to come to you. We need to take advantage of the resources that Diversity, Equity, and Poverty has on their website or their webpage. There are a multitude of resources out there, including Teaching Tolerance, that have handbooks that walk people through how to have these conversations. All right. Moving forward, we want to look at assessment. This is where I get pretty nerdy. I love the importance that PLCs do place on the collection of data and using that data from common formative assessments to move students forward in a positive way and to determine what types of remediation might need to happen. However, that is not the only form of assessment that exists. And so it's so important to find out from your students how they want to demonstrate mastery, how they want to show you what they've learned. And so opening ourselves up to suggestions sometimes requires an ego check, but then when we do allow our student voice to shine through in our instructional practices, the students will come to see that they are partners in the learning process and not passive receivers. So when it comes to assessment, this question is a little different than the previous ones. It's meant to be post-reading the I Have a Dream speech. It's a discussion question for students. And I absolutely love using opinion pieces in the classroom because you can facilitate extremely rich, diverse viewpoint conversations. So they are asking for an opinion about why King discouraged people from fighting discrimination and violence. Is violence an effective means to create change? Why or why not? I'm certain that there are folks out in the crowd going, how do we handle a conversation about violence and what happens when a student does suggest it as a effective means to create change? Don't let that stop you from opening up the conversation, because when students learn that there is some trust and some respect in those conversations based on what you've established through an empowering classroom culture, it is after that point that students will feel confident in pushing back on each other respectfully, in exposing others to the way that they think. And again, this allows us to get to know our students better based on what they choose to share, and we get to see their experiences, their opinions, their feelings. So here in JCPS, we love to incorporate backpack of success skills as often as possible. So we hear the language around creating artifacts frequently now. So students could take this opinion question and turn it into so many different inquiry-based projects, or possibly a PBL could spin off of this. So possibly we could take this question and ask students to create an artifact that analyzes and explores civil rights movements in the modern era and how they were influenced or impacted by the civil rights movements of King's era. There's just so much openness in terms of how students choose to demonstrate their learning based on starting with analyzing the text and then turning it into even deeper and more meaningful conversations and outcomes. And as that does wrap up these sections, even if you have a final comment, I'm happy to let you jump in.
So, what I really push on with assessment, especially because the reality is we are prepping for NTI 2.0, and that is a very heavy lift for teachers. When we are thinking about assessment, we really have to be growth oriented, and assessment can't be something that exists in a finite fashion, especially when we know that many of our students will take full advantage if you give them a multiple choice assessment that isn't, like a common formative assessment, to cheat. It's a reality. So when we're talking about assessment, I'm really going to push on you to be innovative in your thinking and imagine what a student could do if they have mastered your content and they are growing towards mastery of a standard. What could they create? And that really undercuts what Rachel mentioned about the backpack. Not every single lesson is going to have a backpack artifact, but if we're using those touchstones of the backpack to kind of guide what we are having student assessment look like, it's a really good indicator of whether or not you're on the right track in terms of using assessment as a means of establishing equity.
I'll provide a short anecdote, and then I know our time is quickly drawing to a close. When I was still in the classroom, there was a unit of study that my students and I engaged in, and there was a single article that we read, we analyzed, and I was ready to move on. But a lot of my students said, well, what happened next? Or I want to know more about this time in history, or can you tell me more about the people that were included in this story? And my initial reaction was, I need to stick with my timeline, we need to move on. And I thought, no, I need to be more responsive to my students. And so we co-created a menu of research topics and then co-created a menu of mastery products that students were willing to create. And then an entire research project came out of it where I was simply facilitating, otherwise I was hands-off. Students had parameters, but they co-created so much of that they immediately saw how the project reflected their desires, their interests, and their choice of mastery, and it ballooned into something far more meaningful than I would have ever created on my own. So students have a lot to share. They have a lot of high quality ideas, and holding them in can mean the world for your classroom community and, again, those equitable experiences. Even any follow-up? I'm trying to read the chat here. There is a comment where students love to, I like the students to have choice in what they feel is their best work. Yeah, absolutely. Letting kids pick what they want to put in that backpack of skills evidence bank. What else? Anything else?
My own little anecdote what this looks like, because I'll admit that assessment was my weak point. I didn't really know how to think divergently. I was a kid who kind of came up through all levels of classes. I did some honors, I did some AP, I was in just some regular ed courses. And historically, when we think about assessment, a lot of times we think about quantity, and we assume that if something takes kids a long time to do, it must be rigorous. We know that's not the case. We're looking for quality pieces of student synthesis where they have created something to show their mastery. So the one thing I'll share is my push was for rubrics. And I actually co-created rubrics with my seniors. And ultimately, by the end of the first semester of using those co-created rubrics, they were like, there's got to be a simpler way to do this. And then I discovered single point rubrics. So I introduced them to that idea, and they were like, oh, this is so much better. This is perfect. And as a group, we negotiated what their single point rubric would look like. And they had a say in what was pass-fail. But what it really generated was really good, cogent feedback for them to try again And they loved that aspect of that rubric. So being brave and being a little bit transparent and vulnerable with your kids is something that can have tremendous payoff. So I'm just going to echo what Rachel said. Go for it. I promise you, it'll surprise you, but it is so worth doing.
I think that about brings us up to the hour here. So I will turn it back over to the moderator, and we'll keep an eye on the chat for another minute or two.
All right. Yeah, you are correct. Thank you, Rachel and Avon. And go Bears. You missed it before you came in, Avon. I was plugging Butler High School, my alma mater. So
you're always a bear.
Exactly. Everybody do the Butler Rumble, right? So after lunch today, we are going to start off at 12:30 with facilitating virtual circles, and we're gonna go right to the afternoon with our 3:30 session, concluding the day that bullying prevention supports with Steve Giddings and Brittany Knipp. Thank you for joining us today. Subscribe to the channel. Get notified when we upload an on-demand episode, and have a great lunch, guys. Thank you.
Bye.